A Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict Donald Trump. We don't have the full details yet, but there it is, ladies and gentlemen. All of these conservative but anti-Trump people who kept saying Trump was grifting and lying, he was never going to be indicted. Oh, they have egg on their face because Donald Trump's been indicted. And you had many on the left, liberals, who were saying he was going to be indicted. They were excited for it. And you had Trump supporters saying this is an egregious violation of social or political norms. But here we go. The NYPD has ordered a full mobilization. All officers are ordered to wear their uniforms and get ready for potential unrest. And there's a lot to break down in that story alone. So, oh boy, do we have a lot to go through. Before we get started, we got a few things to shout out. It's the last day for us for our new song, Bright Eyes. So go to trashhouserecords.com, purchase the song Bright Eyes for whatever you want. This is the last day. So if everybody buys the song, hopefully we can smash onto Billboard for the fourth time, getting 4 of 4 songs on Billboard. So again, Trash House Records. We also have launched Cast Brew Coffee. Yeah, we're sponsoring ourselves. We launched our own coffee brand. Roberto Jr. is the mascot. Go to castbrew.com. Pre-order yours today. They just entered production and they will ship by May 5th. We have 2 signature blends, Rise with Roberto Jr. Y'all know Roberto Jr., he's our rooster. And Appalachian Nights. Roberto Jr.'s blend is a light roast. Appalachian Nights, of course, a dark roast. And then we have a Colombian and a French roast. They come in ground or whole bean. We are our own sponsors now, so we can't get canceled. If you want to support our endeavors, go to castbrew.com. And of course, go to timcast.com. Become a member, because tonight we're going to have a members-only uncensored show after the main show, which I'm sure is going to be fun either way. So we will also have call-ins. If you become a member, you can join our Discord server where you can submit questions and actually call into the uncensored after show and have your questions answered. We do that Monday through Thursday. So it will be a lot of fun. And it's going to be especially a lot of fun because today we are joined by the omni-liberal himself, Destiny.
Hey, what's up? Trying really hard to follow the rules right now, okay?
Yeah, all right. Do you want to just tell people who you are? What do you do? You've been on the show before.
Yeah, my name is Destiny. In real life, I go by Stephen Bonnell. You can find me at youtube.com/Destiny. And I debate people from a center-left/progressive position. And that's what I've been doing for about the past 6 or 7 years. And then before that, I was a StarCraft 2 semi-professional gamer.
Wow.
Who are you? Zerg, Protoss, Terran?
Zerg, obviously.
I will say this. There's very few people we associate with the left who are willing to come on the show. Most people we encounter, we politely offer. We'll say like, hey, we'll fly you out. We really want to have a conversation. I think they're all liars. But
what happened to Lance?
He's coming.
Is he?
Yeah, absolutely. The Surfs.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Love you, Lance.
We absolutely scheduled him to come on, and he said, hell yeah. And I was like, cool. Like, I'm totally down to have anybody who's in the political conversation come on and talk about these ideas. But I got to be honest, I think a lot of them are just lying. And I do not count you as one of them. I think you actually are intelligent. You have a lot of good points. And I think you just have different opinions. So I think we'll have a good conversation. So thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We also have Sean from Uncensored America.
Hi, how you doing?
Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, I give this guy a lot of trouble. That's what I do. My name is Sean Semenko. I found the free speech organization Uncensored America. And we basically host speaking events on college campuses with anybody that's censored, canceled, or anything in between, honestly. And we're going to have a debate with Stephen and Milo coming up on Christian nationalism at the University of Tennessee. It's going to be in a couple weeks. So
that's cool.
If you want tickets, go to uncensoredamerica.us, and we'll have some for that. And also, Laura Loomer is going to be speaking at University of South Carolina.
Right on.
Awesome, man. I'm Ian Crossland. You hit me up at Ian Crossland anywhere on the internet. Good to see you guys. Let's move. We also have Serge over here.
Yo, I am Serge.com. Pleasure, Destiny. It's nice to see you in real life. Let's do this.
All right.
Before we go much further, because Sean will kill me if I don't bring this up, festival.minds.com. I believe you and I are both doing an event there in a few weeks.
Yeah, April 15th.
Yeah, in Austin. If you guys want tickets for that, they're still selling tickets. So
yes, we're doing a live Timcast IRL that Friday, and that's sold out. But the Minds event is the second day at the same location, the Vulcan, and you guys are going to be there. Ian's going to be there.
I'll be there too. I'll be speaking that day.
Yep.
Yeah, right on. All right, let's jump into this big breaking news story. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking. Manhattan grand jury votes to indict Donald Trump. Trump will be the first former president to be indicted. The grand jury's vote regards an alleged settlement made with adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the former president's 2016 campaign. According to 5 people with knowledge of the matter per the New York Times, Trump and Daniels allegedly had a sexual encounter in 2006, according to the claim. Trump is the first former president to face criminal charges after office. While the specific charges are currently unknown, an indictment is expected to be announced as Trump will be asked to surrender and face arraignment. A lawyer for the former president confirmed his indictment shortly after the initial announcement, the AP reported. In a March 18th Truth Social post, Trump said he would be arrested on the 21st and called for people to protest and take our nation back. Okay, so basically after that, they postpone the indictment. Things get delayed. Then a bunch of people who are, conservative but not pro-Trump started saying Trump's grifting, he's lying, it's not going to happen. Then today they announced, I think it was today they announced the grand jury was going to be suspended for a month. And then all of a sudden, just like a couple hours ago, they announced they voted to indict Donald Trump. So obviously, my opinion on this, as we've talked about it before, is this is silly and stupid. But while we have you, man, what do you think?
If he committed a crime, I think he should have the book thrown at him. I think generally this is a misdemeanor crime. Usually there's a statute of limitations. But if records were falsified in an attempt to cover up another crime, then the statute of limitations is extended. But I don't think any of us have seen the indictment yet. So I wait till they unseal the indictment to see how silly or stupid I think it is. But hey, if he broke the law, I think he should have the book thrown at him. And even ex-presidents, I don't believe are above the law. So
I absolutely agree. I'd like to see more presidents get arrested and charged.
Oh, man, make me nervous, you guys. It's the first time in history a president's ever been indicted.
No, I agree. I don't care. If they break the law, then they should be charged. My issue, I suppose, is it seems overtly political. I mean,
how can we say that without seeing the indictment?
That's a fair point.
But you just said that.
I said it seems overtly political. It's fair to say we don't know for sure, but it seems that way, especially considering the dude campaigned on investigating Trump. They spent years, and this was the best they could come up with, that Cohen paid Stormy Daniels to not write a book or give an interview or whatever about banging Trump, and that Trump tried claiming it was legal fees, despite the fact that a letter was put out 2018 where Cohen's lawyer said Cohen paid for it out of pocket, was never reimbursed. So, I mean, that feels kind of like exculpatory evidence outright, which makes this seem political.
So do you think that the payments to him that were recorded in the book, do you think that's all fake, or? I
don't know. Well, definitely, I'm interested in seeing what the reason.
I just don't understand why, because the thing that drives me the craziest, it happens with the Andrew Tate stuff too, where things will come out and people immediately say, this is political, it's partisan. It's like, well, why not just wait till the indictments come out? And then we can actually see. When the indictments come out, it might be that there's a lot of stuff in there. And it's like, oh, okay, that's fair. And it might be, wow, this is BS. It's obviously
because
political.
Bragg campaigned on doing this.
Sure, but I mean, people can campaign on all sorts of things, right? Giuliani campaigned on cleaning up New York. The guy that,
that literally makes it political.
If you campaign on enforcing laws, is that a political?
No, he
statement?
Campaigned on investigating Trump.
Maybe he thought Trump broke some laws.
But it's
it seems like a fair thing to campaign on.
Show me the man, I'll show you the law that he broke, right?
Well, we're about to see that shown once the indictments are unsealed, huh?
So here's what I think with the potential of this case.
Uh-huh.
You have a lawyer? I imagine you've gone through legal stuff, right?
Not like a dedicated one, but I've a couple depending on what I'm going through. Yeah.
Do you go through their itemized invoices? You might. I mean, I don't know if you do or not.
I've never made a single payment of over $10,000 to a lawyer. So usually they send me the itemized thing, and they bill by every 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
These bills that Trump's paying are over hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think for Cohen, wasn't it like $330,000 or something at the end of the day? Yeah,
something like that. Uh-huh. And so I really doubt Trump was handed this invoice, looked at it and said, no, we can't say we paid Stormy. That's illegal. Let's falsify this record. He probably got a legal bill and was like, just pay him. I don't know, whatever. Right?
Didn't Cohen claim that he and Trump had personal conversations about this particular issue?
Yes, after the fact. But in 2018, Cohen's lawyer claimed Cohen paid for it personally without instruction from Trump and was never reimbursed for it.
Sure. Do you think has Cohen claimed otherwise though?
After the fact, yes, Cohen has claimed otherwise.
So, and those claims were under oath, correct?
Then he should be charged with perjury if that's the case.
But the statements by his boss, were those statements under oath?
His boss?
Yeah, or the other lawyer. Yeah, the other lawyer. Were those under oath?
I don't know who the letter was filed with.
Something that Rosenstein said that I think was really important when he was asked for questioning. This was like 3 or 4 years ago, I think, is he would get very irritated when he was brought before Congress and claims of the media. I think Jim Jordan did this to him. The claims from the media would be brought before him and they'd say, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And he says, well, I don't think that's true. And he's like, do you think they're lying? And something Rosenstein said was, well, if you think they're lying, bring them and have them testify under oath. So I think it's important when we look at people's statements. People will say a lot of things. We saw this with Giuliani and his claims about Trump. People say a lot of things, and then when they're under oath, their stories change significantly. So I'd always be cautious to compare statements made under oath to something that some guy might have just said in a letter or said to the press or said to a friend.
Who's Rosenstein?
I think this was sent to the Federal Election Commission.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what it says. Via email, Federal Election Commission, Office of Complaints, Examination, and Legal Administration. Attention, Crystal Dennis. And the letter says that Cohen did it of his own volition. He paid for it out of pocket. He was never reimbursed. So I would put it this way. It seems political when you have a letter like this from years ago, from 5 years ago. And but again, fair point. We'll see what happens. My issue with it for the most part is really falsified record misdemeanor charge. You want to get into the debate about Barack Obama blowing up a kid? Because I would absolutely love to talk about that. Look, if they want to give Trump a misdemeanor charge and lock him up for however many months a misdemeanor gets him, I would absolutely be willing to make that to agree. You're right. He's got to be charged. Next up, Obama. He blew up a kid. He blew up a bunch of kids.
I don't know if Obama broke a law.
I don't think Americans of any capacity are allowed to kill other Americans.
Of any capacity? Don't cops do it all the time?
Not like.
I mean, it seems like they in the service of doing.
That's a little bit of a semantic trick you played there, right?
Okay.
Obviously, you can kill people in self-defense, but Obama bombed a civilian restaurant in Yemen, a country we're not at war with, killing civilians, including a 16-year-old American citizen. Like, you can't, if you're in the military, you can't just, or a cop, you can't just go and kill somebody.
Murder. You can't murder.
Yeah, but I imagine the justification Obama would use was that this was in defense of U.S. interests or defense of the United States. And in his role as commander-in-chief, the president of the United States has offered wide deference from the Supreme Court for taking actions in the commission of protecting the United States, even if we disagree with them.
Yeah, I think that's criminal. I mean,
but that's fine. But there's a different question of like, is it illegal versus do you think it's criminal, like bad, right? It's probably bad, I guess, but like.
So the Obama administration's argument was that they were trying to target a terrorist leader. But I'm not. I mean, you make a fair point, but I'd be willing to argue that the president does not have the authority to bomb countries we are not at war with.
Well, what about when Trump assassinated Soleimani? That was an assassination.
Where was that taking place in?
In Iraq.
In Iraq,
yeah,
a country we have an AUMF over. An authorization for use of military force.
I don't think the authorization for use of military force, I'm pretty sure we were on good terms with Iraq at that point. I don't know if we had the ability to do whatever we wanted in that country. That was a political assassination, though. But there are executive orders that are against the United States.
And I don't disagree.
Sure. But I'm just saying that in general, there's multiple questions going on here. We can say, do we think it's wrong or bad? Probably. I think generally the United States president killing American citizens is generally a bad thing, unless there's really good justification for it. But there's a difference between that versus is it illegal? And I think that the law tends to, we argued about this a little bit before the show, when Trump was doing things at the border that we thought, when I say we progressives and the left got really mad at, the Supreme Court tended to side with him because the president is given wide deference over matters of
what was he doing
national
on the
security.
border?
I think it was when he was using, he couldn't get the funding for the border wall. No. It was over banning certain people coming into the country. When he named there were 7 Muslim majority countries. And when he was running for president, even Giuliani said he's trying to find ways to do a Muslim majority ban. Technically, he's not allowed to do that.
Venezuela, North Korea were on that list, though.
Yeah, well, he changed it up, I think, after the first one didn't go through for whatever reason. But once he did that ban, when people tried to challenge it, the Supreme Court basically said, president, border, he can do almost anything he wants because it's the president of the border.
Yeah, but that's not blowing up a kid.
I didn't say it was blowing up a kid, but I'm just saying that in general, you would think that like, well, if we're talking like border, if we're talking about like passing policy at the border, that seems like a congressional thing. Like we should be passing laws about immigration policy, but the president can do that basically all on his own because the Supreme Court's like, hey, he's a president, national security, he can do almost whatever he wants.
I think I see the disconnect. I'm less concerned with legality.
Okay, I'm only talking legality. So.
Right. So I think that a president who bombs a country we're not at war with should be stripped of his power and criminally charged for killing an American citizen. And it should be literally under the U.S. murder statutes that are covered by multiple state and federal laws. I don't look at it like, well, you know.
Is a murder statute, could I in Tennessee get arrested if I bomb somebody in Yemen? Is that I don't know what the.
I mean, that's a good point. You might, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that might be like way worse than murder. It might be terroristic, international. I'm pretty sure if you, as an American citizen, set off a bomb in a foreign country, you'd be criminally charged in the U.S.
Yeah, but I don't know if it'd be under state statutes, right? That sounds like some
federal,
international, federal, yeah, maybe. Or, yeah.
Julian Assange is being criminally charged in the U.S., even though he's not a U.S. citizen who didn't do anything in the United States. Kim.com for that matter too. I mean, the dude's was never this country, and they went after him. So
I just think that I think it's really important that we separate conversations of what should somebody be charged with versus like what do we think is wrong. And I think both conversations are important. We could talk about like, is this wrong or is it not wrong? And there's probably a good conversation to be had there. But there's a difference between that versus like somebody needs to be charged here. Because like, well, charged with what? Is there actually a crime broken, or is it just like we're really upset about this particular thing, which is fair.
Yeah, I think the Patriot Act's insane, and the National Defense Authorization Act insane. It gives them it really gives the president the authority to bomb an American citizen anywhere in the United States.
It doesn't. It gives them the right to rendition anyone, anywhere in the world, and then hold secret tribunals. And I think that's wrong. And I think if we're going to just play like the question of, is it legal? well, then there's a whole lot of really awful stuff the government's going to end up doing if we just say, well, they made it legal so they can do it. But
but this is what I always fight against, like when it comes to like BLM and everything too. It's important to change the laws. If we want people to be held accountable, we have to change the laws to reflect what we think our moral will is so that we can actually get people to be held accountable. Because otherwise you just get a bunch of people that are like, this is wrong, do something. It's like, okay, well, I don't know. What do you want us to do? Like, it's not illegal. Like, we can't do anything about it, you know?
If we changed the law and it made it illegal to bomb kids in Yemen, then we wouldn't be able to charge people that were doing it while it was legal. Because it was legal when they did it.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, do we want to make it so that when we change laws, we can retroactively?
No,
right?
I don't. Anyway,
like I don't think we were ever officially at war with Syria, right?
No.
But Trump bombed the airport. Is that like? But again, he's the president. It's our military. Like,
I guess the other question is, in talking about Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, he wasn't the intended target. The intended target was somebody else, and he had just a few weeks prior killed Anwar al-Awlaki, Abdulrahman's dad. So he kills this guy who's an American citizen. Then argues, well, look, he was a jihadi. He was preaching against the United States. He had to be stopped. But then a few weeks later, he targets a civilian restaurant in Yemen, blows up this restaurant with a drone strike, killing Anwar al-Awlaki's son, Abdulrahman. And the response was, well, we were targeting a terror leader, so it's okay. So I guess the question is, I'm curious as to the legalities and the moral standing of, one, does the president have the legal authority to kill anyone in any country at any time in the eyes of the United States? If he does and hits the wrong target and kills an innocent American citizen, is there a manslaughter similar charge for this kind of conflict?
I think internationally, unfortunately, I think we just don't tend to hold countries responsible. This has happened multiple times. I'll avoid the USS Liberty example because that's a whole loaded thing. But there was, I think Iran. After we killed Soleimani, in the night or the night after that followed, Iran accidentally shot down, I think, one of their own civilian airliners. And there were no charges. Nothing was held for that. I believe...
In Iran?
In Iran, yeah.
I mean, they're like authoritarian, though,
True. No, I'm just saying, but internationally, I believe it happened over Ukraine as well. I think that there was a missile launched from Crimea, I believe. That was probably with the assistance of Russian troops. There was a civilian airliner shot down there. That nothing happened. The United States, I believe, I think we shot down a civilian plane that killed like over 150 or over 200 people. That might have been south of Iran, I think. Flying towards Saudi Arabia, maybe, and we didn't do anything about that. We said sorry, but I think that was like 200 or so civilians dead. I mean, it happens, it sucks, but I mean, precedent internationally is that like sometimes mistakes happen, countries do mistakes, they're bad, and you pay money sometimes, but there's usually not like criminal courts for those types of mistakes. Now that it was proven, then yeah, of course we say. But
the best I could do on short notice, the ACLU wrote an article saying that it was unlawful.
Well, if the ACLU said it.
No, I mean, yeah, it's
when they said which was unlawful.
The not just the killing of Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, but the other civilians that were killed in these countries we're not at war with was. It says the killing program isn't only unlawful, it's unwise, and that's about on the short term. There have been legal arguments made that Obama does have the right to kill Americans abroad, but I kind of feel like we've got multiple amendments that afford American citizens a plethora of rights before they can just kill you. So that's where I'm at on the issue, I suppose.
Do you still have American rights when you're in another country?
You still pay taxes, so yes, you do.
And if
the State Department will send guys to rescue you if you're kidnapped.
Maybe.
This is the first I've heard of the USS Liberty that you mentioned earlier. This
is God, no, don't even do it.
1967, during the Israeli Six-Day War, they accidentally torpedoed or they shot down a...
Yeah, but depending on who you ask, it's not an accident. That's like a whole can of worms of weird Jewish stuff.
Let's jump to this next story. From Timcast.com, quote, political persecution, election interference at the highest level in history. Trump responds to indictment, will reportedly surrender early next week. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The statement from Trump, let's pull it up, let's read it. Here we go, if I can, text is kind of small. He writes, this is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of hardworking men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, 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 impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. But now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president has never happened before ever. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Rather than stopping the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we will defeat Joe Biden. And we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. Well, very interesting. What do you think?
They better be doing a really good job at that office. I think there's a lot of political consideration that has to go into these charges because it's a really scary world when your criminal justice system is potentially interfering with an election, which is something that, despite what some Americans think, that's all of our intelligence agencies try really hard to avoid this exact scenario where you might be indicting or arresting or charging with crimes like somebody that could be running for president. So I hope that whatever they have, I hope when these indictments are unsealed, some really solid stuff, and it's not just a whole bunch of Lucy whatever that ends up falling apart.
What do you think about, he mentions Ukraine. What do you remember the whole Ukraine gate fiasco impeachment? Donald Trump quid pro quo.
Yep, I do remember that. Yeah, what about it?
What are your thoughts?
Am I allowed to say the F word?
After 15 seconds, yeah.
I mean, we try to keep it family
In the first 15
friendly.
seconds,
Okay.
they demonetize.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm okay with that impeachment, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
You think Trump committed a crime with?
Absolutely.
What,
Yeah.
you want to elaborate? I know it might be. It's been a long time.
It's been a while, but my understanding was that Trump contacted Ukraine, Zelensky, and he was asking if there was wrongdoing done by, I think it was by Biden in finding that prosecutor, and if they had any information about potential wrongdoings that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden had been involved in Ukraine. And in exchange for that, he wanted to withhold aid that was already congressionally approved to Ukraine for that.
So what's wrong with that? Like, why is that? Was it a problem?
Legally or morally, or
Both, either, whatever you think.
legally, I believe it's because I don't think the president has the authority to withhold that aid. I don't remember what the legal arguments were on that. For the moral part is our president probably shouldn't be asking other countries to investigate like wrongdoings of political opponents. That's a really
But Joe
scary
Biden
world.
wasn't running for office at the time.
I mean, then why was he? Hold on, I'm trying to think of the timeline for this.
Yeah, Joe Biden. It was a year before he announced. That was part of the controversy, that Joe Biden had not announced he was running for office at all.
No, but hold on. He might not have announced it, but like
No,
I'm pretty sure
there-
most people knew he was running. Like in the early polls, like if you looked at Real Clear Progress, if you looked at a lot of the polling aggregate sites, like they were already polling Biden. He'd already been factored in quite a while. He might have announced that he was going to run for office, but I'm pretty
a
sure a lot
year.
of people were expecting it.
I mean that's just speculative media stuff. So Trump isn't actively investigating a political opponent, unless the argument is we all secretly knew that was going to be the case. They were like Bernie Sanders was still in the race. There were a bunch of other people at the time. The controversy was like, why Joe Biden? There were other Democrats that were actually talking about running, and it wasn't Joe Biden. He announced late.
He did announce late, but he was still factored into the polls really early because like a lot of people thought he was going to run. The question is, though, do we want the president contacting other, even if he's not running, he is still a type
What
of
if the
political
vice
opponent,
president did the same thing? Is that
If the vice president was, I
Like,
think
do you
that
think-
anytime you're reaching out, like, let's ask, if we pull back on a macro level, why is Trump asking this information? Does he genuinely think that there's been some grave wrongdoing done by the Bidens that needs to be corrected for?
Yeah.
And if so, why isn't he asking our intelligence agencies for information about this? Why is he going to another country and asking?
I mean, I don't. We have the Five Eyes Spy Club. We do that all the time. It's
Where
right.
we don't do that all the time. Going to another leader and saying, "Hey, I need you to get dirt on a potential political opponent," because I think there's something.
Well,
like-
he wasn't a political opponent, and
he,
he did.
he is a political. Even if he was the vice president of the former opposite party guy that he just as he came into office. What do you mean? He's some kind of political opponent, right?
I mean-
even if he wasn't directly running yet, like I would argue, if he was asking this
So-
for like
so
AOC, for instance, I would say that it's similar.
Trump
right?
didn't go to the president of Ukraine and say, "I got this political opponent I need dirt on." He said, "What's up with this video of Joe Biden threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless you take action on his behalf?" And the president of Ukraine was like, "I'm not sure." And he goes, "Well, can you look into that? I want to know what that's about."
It wasn't just, can you look into that? It was, if you don't find what I need, I might withhold aid that's already been congressionally approved for you.
And
that was
so-
the issue. If he was just asking questions, we wouldn't be having the conversation. He would have been impeached, right?
So this is the point that I'm getting at. When this started and Donald Trump asked about this, specifically because there was a viral video of Joe Biden outright admitting to threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless a prosecutor got fired, you had Joe Biden breaking the law.
Sure. So there was a video of Joe Biden on stage making the claim/joke on stage where he's saying, I told him, you don't do it, you're not going to blah, 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 blah.
Joke.
But in terms of him but in terms of there actually being a serious offer on the table where he was like threatening to withhold aid, I'm not even sure if that was ever the case. We have that one statement that he was made
Victor
publicly. Number
Shokin's
one,
signed a sworn affidavit that it's what happened.
sure. Number one. Number two, the impetus for Shokin being removed from Ukraine was not to get some kind of political dirt on an opponent. It was a completely different scenario. This is a prosecutor that all of Europe and over half of Ukraine wanted fired, that the United States was acting on behalf of the Western world and trying to pressure this prosecutor out because of his lack of prosecuting corruption in the country. That's a totally different thing than I threatened to withhold aid from this guy because he's not giving me dirt on potential political opponents.
So why is it that the guy who was being investigated, Mykola Zlochevsky, returned to the country? He had fled when Shokin was investigating him. And then after Joe Biden got Shokin removed, Zlochevsky returned to the country to begin working on Burisma again.
Why did he return to the country?
Well,
it could have been for any number of reasons. I'm not sure.
Right. So the argument from the Democrats, the specific corruption that wasn't being prosecuted, referring to is the prosecution of Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma.
Okay.
And the argument they made was he wasn't investigating him. That was the problem. And then Joe Biden says, and we got him out, and then they put in someone solid. The only issue is when Shokin had about a dozen active investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky fled the country. They froze his account. When Biden came in and got the prosecutor fired, Zlochevsky safely returned to Ukraine without fear of criminal prosecution. When Donald Trump made that phone call, Zlochevsky fled again. So it sounds more like, you've got Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma, you got a former CIA director on the board of Burisma, and Zlochevsky, the founder. And Shokin had 12 different around 12 to 14.
All of the investigations into Burisma were dead.
No, they weren't. That's not true.
It was
wrong.
Absolutely true.
Completely
they
false.
were only revived 1 month before Shokin was forced out. Every single one of those probes was completely dead.
That's wrong.
You can Google it and look for it if you want.
So I'm citing Matt Taibbi.
Oh God.
Right, and if you don't want to trust a journalist or whatever,
or like any actual article, not a tweet, like any
I'm not talking about a
actual.
tweet. I'm talking about an article that he wrote breaking down what happened with Ukraine and his investigation into Zlochevsky, and this is from like 2017.
Okay, so your claim is that the probes into Burisma never went cold and never died; that they were active the entire time.
They were active the entire time, right?
Okay, my understanding is that those probes were all cold and all dead, and it was part of the reason
hold on. You
why
said dead
Shokin was
before. Now
pressured.
you're saying cold.
It's the same thing. They weren't being actively worked on. So
So-
there were probes, but nobody was doing anything with them until it was 1 month before Shokin was actually ousted that there was some progress started to be made on those.
So that's a very difficult question to get into. The fact is there were active investigations.
but that's kind of the meat of what we're talking about, right?
Well, so
it's kind of important to settle the fact of the matter on that. Yeah.
Were there 12 investigations? Yes or no?
I know that there were investigations open for a couple years, but my understanding is they
That's
were
all that
open.
matters.
It's not all that matters. They were dead investigations. There wasn't
don't
any
know
progress
that.
being made on it. That's what I read that was reported.
Right. My point is this.
But that's pretty important because if they were being actively investigated, then that obviously changes a little bit the story that we're telling, right?
So did Shokin have investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky? Yes, he had about a dozen.
But whether or not
Did
investigation is
Zlochevsky
live or dead, isn't that important? You don't think so?
Did Zlochevsky flee the country while these were on the books? Yes, he did.
I'm not
when
sure. Yeah.
Shokin was removed and the investigations were officially stricken, Zlochevsky returns.
So do you think that there are criminal wrongdoings that he's done that he's not being prosecuted for?
What I think is that the United States is in an energy crisis, in a war with Eastern powers. The United States has been trying to get a pipeline for natural gas called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Europe, but Syria said no. Syria destabilizes for whatever reason. We want to run that pipeline through Syria, through Turkey, into Europe to offset the Gazprom gas monopoly. Russia runs natural gas into Europe through Ukraine through Gazprom. It's about 20%. It's massively powerful for them and it allows them to control prices. The United States has interests in setting up an energy company to offset that monopoly, hence Burisma. Hunter Biden's on the board, probably for these reasons. A former CIA director, probably for these reasons.
Wasn't Burisma one of the smaller gas companies in that country?
Absolutely. And it seems like the U.S. was trying to compete with Russia to get cheaper gas to Europe. And the argument made was that Europe was constrained by high gas prices from Russia, and that we wanted the European economy to be bolstered and grow faster to compete with China, but Russia was basically keeping us pinned down.
Sure. This is nice conjecture, but like, is there anything backing up any of this aside from like...
This is all the official reporting.
What do you mean by official reporting?
So
there was official reporting that we got rid of Shokin because we wanted to bolster U.S. interest in
That's the only speculation I have. I'm saying based on the facts, it seems to me the issue was Shokin did have investigations into Burisma, which was a problem for U.S. interests, not because of corruption, but because it's more of a war front. It's more of a...
Do you think that Shokin was a corrupt prosecutor?
No.
Okay. Why did all of Europe and a lot of Ukraine hate him?
Because Europe wants cheap gas. Shokin was impeding that. It's not an issue of corruption. It's an issue of conflicting interests.
He was impeding it how?
So active investigations into Burisma are impeding U.S. interests in competing with Gazprom.
Burisma isn't even the largest gas player in that country, though.
That's not the point. We don't have the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Ukraine because Syria blocked it. So you have a multi-front effort going back to, I think, like the 2000s to get cheaper natural gas into Europe. So of course they're not going to like anybody who's got Eastern allegiances. It's possible that with Ukraine you had, in the eastern part of the country, more pro-Russia sentiment. With Yanukovych, you had more pro-Russia sentiment, and you had government officials that were like, look, we are not just pro-West. Of course, then he gets ousted. There's unrest. I can't remember.
What do you mean for Yanukovych, though? Yanukovych was standing alone with that pro-Russian status, though. That wasn't all the government officials. That was part of the reasons why people were so upset with Yanukovych, was because he was trying to push for Russia in opposition to what their parliament was even pushing for.
That's what I'm saying. And so there's probably, he wasn't the only person. The sentiment was fairly split, but was leaning towards the EU.
Had been voted on by their parliament, like, to favor the EU. That was what the vote was for.
And so the way I see it is there are probably elements of that government that were more favorable to Russia, which is why Europe doesn't like them. The people, Ukrainians who want to be a part of the EU and members of the EU who want Ukraine to join because they want more control over natural gas, of course, naturally would oppose anybody who is siding with Russia.
Do you think that Ukraine was a corrupt country prior to 2014?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you think so? That's for all of Europe and for everybody complaining about the corruption and stuff relating to Shokin, you think that all of that was BS and they just didn't like him because he was preventing their cheap oil or cheap gas?
Say that one more time.
You think that all of the upsettedness that people across Europe and Ukraine had with Shokin had nothing to do with any of the corruption of the country or his lack of pressuring? Because like that's the official story that's given, and it seems to be like pretty consistent throughout. Like
I can only speak on a surface level about this one particular issue because I don't know the inner workings of all of Ukrainian politics.
Okay,
but what I do know is there has been a tremendous effort by Western forces leading to outright physical military conflict to get natural gas into Europe to offset Russia's control of gas prices. Naturally, it seems like these things are related. Speculative. The facts are the U.S. went to Syria and said, can we build the Qatar-Turkey pipeline? Syria literally said to the United States, that would be bad for our ally, Russia, so we will not allow it. Fortunately for us, for whatever reason, Syria falls into civil war, and we just happen to oppose the guy who denied that. I don't think the whole reason for opposing it has to do with gas, but it's convenient for us nonetheless. We weren't able to do it. And to make it worse, Iran wanted to tap the same natural gas field and send the gas through Iraq and Turkey into Europe to strengthen Russia's control of energy. So the argument was the EU is trying to grow and become a unified bloc to compete with the growth of China, and Russia was basically impeding us because Russia wants to be their own big dog, right?
Sure. Man, if you ever wanted to revisit a detailed breakdown of this, it'd be interesting to do a little bit of reading prior to this. But let's say hypothetically I grant you all of that. Why didn't Trump say any of that?
Trump doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Okay, so then Trump's investigation into the impetus for this whole conversation.
On the internet, bro.
Okay, so the impetus for this whole conversation of like Trump pressuring them to find out if any wrongdoings happened had nothing to do with anything that you just laid out. It was just having to do with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden.
It had to do with him seeing a video and then seeing people and post memes. Probably, to be completely honest, it was Tucker Carlson.
Sure.
Who said something.
But it was a little bit more than just asking questions, because if he was just curious, I don't think that the question of aid being withheld would have ever been brought up in that conversation. So clearly there was a little bit, you're saying that Biden wasn't seen as a political opponent at all, but if that was the case, I don't know why Trump would go so far to try to solicit information from the Ukrainian government such that he would withhold aid or threaten to withhold aid in exchange for some information about him.
You know,
seems like a random politician to target. Like, why would he be so dead set on getting information about Biden?
Hates the Democrats. They were calling him a Russian spy.
I think there's a little bit.
It's like-
I think it
it's
has
like
to be a little bit
revenge.
more than that. Revenge to throw away to get impeached.
I mean, you can think that, but I don't even care all that much about the speculation as to why he did it, right?
Sure.
If you want to argue,
well,
that
I think
you
that's
can, but it's
probably
not-
one of the most important parts. That is the most important part, is why he did it.
But you
Because
have to
if
make
he was-
assumptions to get to that point.
Do I? If
You do.
he's asking for dirt specifically with respect to a political opponent, I'm making assumptions. I feel like there's a lot more assumptions being made on your end that he was just genuinely interested in what Joe Biden had said and was threatening to withhold aid because he wanted a legitimate investigation of the firing of a prosecutor.
I mean,
I feel like it's pretty legitimate.
What we know
Yeah.
is that he said, "What's going on with this video? I want to see some action on this, or else." Right?
I feel like there was a little bit more said than that, but I don't remember because it's been a long time.
Well, I'm
since
trying to paraphrase for the sake of
Sure,
it.
but I feel like the specific requests he was making for information are probably pretty important. I could look up exactly what the charges are alleged, but it's been a while. But
So I guess the reason I bring it up is not to just debate Trump or whatever,
Sure.
but to ask the question of, should we indict Joe Biden for doing the same thing?
I don't believe Joe Biden did the same thing, though. The request and who it was on behalf of was far different than. The
But Joe
request
Biden
of
does
Trump
not
was-
have the authority to threaten to withhold
I
congressional.
don't know if Joe
approved aid.
Biden actually threatened to withhold aid,
But he
if that was
admitted on camera that he did.
He said something on camera that I don't
He
know if that's what he
literally
actually
said on
did.
camera, "I told him that if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion." And he said,
Yeah.
you don't have the authority to do that. I said, "Call the president, ask him, see what he says." Well, son of a bitch. 6 hours later, he's fired.
Trump also said on camera that he could shoot somebody on 6th Street and not get arrested for it.
But that's different from admitting to committing a crime.
I don't know if Biden admitted to a crime there or if he was just talking shit. Biden also was in front of an audience saying that he had, like 170 IQ and graduated from Harvard Law or something, right? He obviously didn't do that, right? So I don't know when Biden is on stage and like, I told him I was going to withhold it. I don't know if he's just like, he got his big boy pants on and he's talking shit. If he actually did do that and he didn't have the authority to do it and it was on behalf of some selfish motive or whatever, then yeah, I think there should obviously be an investigation or something. But the fact that there's never been an official statement confirming that, there's never been any side from the Ukrainian officials confirming that, and
Maybe there should be.
everything relating to that. Yeah, but every time Republicans say there should be and they go and look, they find nothing. Okay, but whether it's Benghazi, whether it's Hillary's emails, whether it's a lot of the Hunter Biden stuff,
we know the Hillary's email stuff was there. Like that's not even.
we don't know if Hillary Clinton gave a command to delete stuff that shouldn't have been deleted to impede an investigation. We don't know that. We never found information about that, which is what the charge would have been for.
Sure. We know that she had a server with 35,000 emails on it. We know that her staff smashed hammers. We know that one of her staffers, I guess, he went on Reddit and he said, "How can I purge emails with someone's name on it?" or something like that.
Sure.
And like, I think, didn't he get charged or something?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I think it was granted immunity in exchange for information.
Yeah.
related to the
That's
case.
crazy, right? I remember when that happened. Like, some dude on Reddit found the account, and they were like, "I think this guy worked."
Sure,
for
but the
Hillary
crime that we were looking for was whether or not Hillary Clinton ordered classified emails to be deleted. It doesn't seem like that was. We spent a whole lot of time talking about that. And for all the complaining that we do about a judge indicting Trump or intelligence agencies interfering in elections, Comey coming out and making the statements that he did about Hillary Clinton were not only unprecedented, but also potentially election altering too. So, I mean,
Do you think Barack Obama ordering a drone strike that killed an American citizen warrants an investigation of that?
there might have already been an investigation. I don't know what the vetting process inside of orders from the government.
Well, like whether there was or
drone strikes
wasn't,
like
do you think there should have been?
yeah, there probably always should be when there's collateral damage. Didn't it happen? Was it in Afghanistan or Pakistan? Wasn't there a hospital that we accidentally bombed like a year and a half ago, I think?
Probably.
Where I think like 20 or 30 people died and it was all civilians.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, anytime something like that happens, there should obviously be some type of oversight.
And-
but that's
and-
different between like, there needs to be a criminal charge for an intentionally destructive act done, right? Do you agree that there's a world of difference between Biden ordered an American citizen killed overseas versus American citizen dies as a result of collateral damage from a drone strike? Those two things are worlds apart, right?
Well, the added context is we're not at war with this country, and it was
Doesn't
a civilian
matter.
restaurant.
There's still, even if we aren't at war with the country, there's still worlds apart, right?
Well, so let's slow down for a second.
Sure. My question is very simply, if
The
we're
authority
not,
granted to the president does not extend to bombing any random country.
well, it seems like that's not where we're at legally right now, right?
I think it's not where we're at because the American people don't do anything about it.
Did we vote in Congress to bomb the Syrian airport when Trump returned fire for whatever gas attacks?
No, but I think there's something different to an active war zone we do have troops on the ground in, and I don't agree with
Yeah, but we're
Trump
not at
firing.
war with Syria.
We have ground troops. We haven't declared a war since World War II. I don't.
Sure,
agree.
but we didn't even have a UA, Senate
UMF.
use of, for
I
authorized
don't.
military
I don't
force,
agree
right?
with Trump's firing of
Sure,
missiles.
I'm
I
just
think they're
saying that
wrong.
like if an American citizen even would have
I don't think
died on the
anybody died,
base, yeah, I'm just saying that we're not voting for war in these areas, right? We're still bombing them. So it seems like if you're asking me a moral question versus a legal question, those are two different things. If you're asking me legally, it seems like that seems to be that the president can indeed order drone strikes on places that we're not at war with. That seems to be where we're at legally right now. Morally, should he be able to? I don't know. I don't know what the justification is for that, but
Let's jump to this next story from the Tampa Bay Times. DeSantis says Florida will not assist in possible Trump extradition after indictment. The Florida governor weighed in on Twitter. He said, the weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It is un-American. The Soros-backed Manhattan DA has consistently bent the law to downgrade felonies and to excuse criminal misconduct. Yet now he is, and then there's a second tweet here. Where is it at? Wait. Oh, okay. Yet now he is stretching the law to target a political opponent. Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with the Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political agenda. What are your thoughts?
Is he actually Soros-backed?
I think so.
Or was it that, like, because I thought that the actual thing was like George Soros contributed to a PAC that has also contributed to him. I think it's a little different, but regardless.
Yeah, but even outside of that, I mean, Ron DeSantis saying we're not going to allow. What is he saying?
We're not going to extradite, right? Is what it sounds like.
Well, did he even really say that? He said, "Will not assist in the extradition." It's like a pretty tepid statement, to be completely honest. So I don't even know if there's an actual question to be asked. Should Florida assist in the extradition? Like, does it matter?
Well, it kind of matters. I think it matters based on the precedent of the crime. If this is a crime that they wouldn't normally extradite for, then they probably don't have an obligation to, right? Like, I don't think California would extradite me if I had like an outstanding speeding ticket in Iowa, right?
Yeah, well,
this might be a similar thing where they don't extradite. But if there was like if somebody like did a double homicide and Florida's like, we're not going to extradite them, that'd probably be a pretty big deal. But yeah. I don't know for a crime like this if extradition is ordinary or not.
Donald Trump, what's the charge that he falsified a legal bill?
It's that he falsified a legal bill, but it has to be something more than that, right? Because that charge in and of itself is a misdemeanor that the statute of limitations would have expired on. So it's that he falsified that legal bill in the commission or the obscurement of another crime. I don't know what that other crime is, right? Yeah.
I think it's related to election stuff. The argument was that it pertained to campaign finance, or they use campaign funds to do it or something like that. Yeah. Because Cohen billed Trump campaign or whatever. But I guess we'll see when the indictment comes out if they're stretching this up to a felony. My view is it's all overtly political, and this country is being ripped to shreds. So I don't know if it really matters whether DeSantis is going to do anything or not. It's whether we can have a debate about it or not, no one's going to agree. The end result is just going to be people on the right saying that Trump is being politically persecuted, and people on the left saying it's justice.
Well, it only matters for the primary because DeSantis this whole time has been trying to position himself as Trump without the bad stuff. That's sort of his whole brand. But as you go into this more and more, you're going to see that DeSantis really isn't a Trump guy. And he's going to try and make his own brand of sort of Trumpism, but with some other stuff. And I think a lot of hardcore Trump people like myself, I mean, I was a day one 2016 supporter, right? When he came down the golden escalators, I was already sold. But a lot of people that I know in D.C. or in sort of these other circles, they think, oh, well, we should move on from Trump. It's time for DeSantis to take over. But I mean, the reality is this whole thing is only going to help Trump. I think the mugshot, it's going to be on T-shirts. It's going to be art. Like, people are going to love it. On the left, they're loving it because they think, oh, we finally got him. We got the handcuffs on Donald Trump. But on the right, they're just going to think he's a martyr.
Can I play this video from Dash Dabrowski?
Yeah.
I think I got to turn it down.
Donald Trump has been indicted in Manhattan. The grand jury just voted to indict Donald Trump for his hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. This is big news.
I don't know if he realizes, like, if he's in control of his moves. When he goes, what is he? Been indicted. He tilts his head forward and he gets shadow under his eyes and looks real villainous for a second.
What is it called? The Kubrick stare?
Comes back up. Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm sorry. I think
highly entertaining.
It's unwell.
Soy jacking.
It's an act. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
he's been doing this for money.
When it comes to stuff like this, I think it's really important that you mentally swap the people out in your head to figure out how you feel about it, because we have a huge problem right now in this country with actually having principled positions on any fucking issue whatsoever. So I think that when people are trying to think, like, should Trump get arrested for this? Like, think, like, if it was Hillary Clinton, would you feel the same? If it was AOC, would you feel the same? If it was DeSantis, would you feel the same? I think it's really important to do these mental swaps to check for honesty, to make sure that it's not just, like you said, like all partisan politics at the end of the day.
I agree.
Especially when legal systems are involved.
I agree, but I don't think it's principles. I don't think anyone's principled at all.
Yeah, I am.
But I'm not saying that.
I am too.
I'm not saying that from like a dejected, sense, or like I'm jaded and blackpilled. I'm saying it that people genuinely don't understand the moral philosophies around principles and their positions. So the example I often give is when it came to Florida on the parental rights and education bill, you had conservatives being like, parents have the final say in whether or not their kids are being exposed to this stuff and whether or not their kids are going to get these treatments. The teachers have no right to withhold that information from the parents. And then my response is, in Washington, they completely agree that the parents have final say. So when the parent says the child should get sex change surgery, the government should not be allowed to intervene to stop it. You see the point? The principle is the same. Should parents have final say? But both conservatives and left liberals or whatever position have a differing view of when it should be allowed. When it comes to a child deciding they are trans, the left passes laws saying they can withhold that from parents. When it comes to parents wanting to give their children sex change surgery, conservatives argue the state should intervene to stop that. So which is it, right? People don't have principles, they have moral foundations, and they have lines that they're willing to cross or not cross. And so both sides will argue my principle is X, but it does not apply. That's my point.
Sure.
So
I do better.
I don't think there's a do better or there's a bad. It's quite literally, if two factions of people have different moral standards, that's it.
Yeah, but I think the problem is not being honest about those moral standards. Like, I think that's the issue, because when we argue for certain principles, I think everybody ends up, at the end of the day, we're all attacking like the shadows and the ghosts of the people that we're arguing against, because nobody actually believes in a lot of the things they're saying, and that hurts our ability to actually move the conversation forward. Like, there's a lot of people, for instance, I think I even saw this on your Twitter, I don't remember the tweets, there's a lot of conservatives that fucking hated red flag laws, and now after this trans shooting, a whole bunch of conservatives are like, well, should mentally ill people have guns? I'm not actually sure. And it's like, what changed?
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Is that the principles don't apply to most people, left or right.
Sure.
It's
but then there are principles there. You just have to dig a little bit deeper. So like for some conservatives, the principle is like, fuck trans people. I don't want them to have any rights. Rather than like, I don't agree with like red flag laws. And we just have to get to like the deeper positions where they actually are, so we can fight against those positions.
See, my thing with red flag laws is I'm completely in favor of them so long as they have an adversarial due process. The problem with red flag laws, literally, is that they're not adversarial. It's like someone can go to a judge, the judge can issue a writ and then just come and take your guns. Whereas due process requires your rights to confront an accuser, to file a rebuttal, to say no, and then actually have a chance to have proper adjudication. So I used to not be in favor of it until it was actually conservatives who argued that through due process, your rights can be curtailed. Hence, like being put in prison. If you break the law and then a court gives you due process and says you broke the law, we can literally lock you in a box and take everything away from you. And I'm like, okay, fair point. In that case, if you're mentally ill and then someone files a claim saying you're a risk to yourself and a harm to yourself or others, then you should have the right to receive a notice in the mail, answer that claim, reject it, and then have a judge actually issue a standard due process. If you're in prison, you can't have guns. You know what I mean? Like so if there is some standard by which we believe you are a threat and you are going to cause harm, then you have a right to challenge that in court, same as any other criminal charge you have. And then if you lose, come take your guns.
Sure. And I think that is a defensible, that argument is defensible. But it's not defensible if it only comes up when a trans person goes on a shooting spree. That's the
I
only
completely
issue
agree.
There, right? And it seems like there's a lot of arguments against red flag laws that are still standing, like those arguments didn't go away. Like I'm probably against red flag laws. I lean slightly against them just because I feel like it makes it so hard. If you're a guy that likes guns and you've got like mental issues, man, going to a therapist becomes really fucking scary. Yeah. Because what if you get a diagnosis that is now precluding you from owning firearms? And now you've got to show up in court and you've got to fight a judge for your Second Amendment right, which is a very important one in the United States. That gets hairy. And depending on how people, represent red flag laws and what type they're pushing for, it is a really scary thing, but I'm just saying that. Yeah.
That's a good point. And that's a challenge.
It reminds me of the. Do you guys know BoJack Horseman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that scene with the saying the women carry guns and she's in front of Congress and she's like, well, if you don't want women to carry guns because you're worried about what's going to happen, then you either have to ban all guns or you've got to let women do it, and they like ban all guns. It's like, okay, well that's kind of what it feels like happened with the transgender thing with the after the shooting, where conservatives are like all of a sudden conservatives are like, well, maybe it is really important that we look at the mental health of people that have guns, and like everyone on the left is like, what the fuck? Well, like yeah, of course, but.
Well, I agree. I think if someone goes on Prozac, you could argue that they're not mentally well for a gun. If someone's an alcoholic,
that's
you
like
could argue
25% of fucking Americans at this point, though.
Pharmaceuticals.
That's scary. And there's another interesting thing I talk about when I was in L.A. in Venice, and you got those guys selling weed cards, and they're like, I'm walking down the street going to the skate park, and this guy goes, yo, man, you get your weed card yet? You get your weed card? And I'm like, nah, I'm a weed card. He's like, why not? Why don't you have your weed card? And I'm like, I don't need one. He's like, I'm not sick. And he goes, oh, well, you skateboard, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, don't you like hurt your legs or whatever? And I was like, yeah, sometimes my knees. And he goes, oh, bro, you got knee problems? Oh, you need some meat. You need some weed. You got to get a weed card. Doctor will get you signed up. Not interested. You get that weed card, you smoke weed, you aren't eligible, you can't own a gun.
Maybe for physical pain, you could get away with it, but for if you say it's stress, you're
no. Ian,
Wait.
that's
Is that
not the point.
true? Or are you saying it could theoretically be true with red flag laws?
On the form, it asks you if you are a user of narcotics. And so the risk is if you have a weed prescription card, yes, you are. And that means you will be ineligible for owning a gun.
It's insane.
Huh.
Yeah, so you ever see what are they called? The forms you fill out when you have to buy a gun? It asks you if you're a user of narcotics.
And they have it classified federally as a Schedule 1 narcotic.
Right. It's like the worst possible one. If you have a weed card, I don't think you'll be able to argue you weren't lying. They're going to say, you have a weed card prescription, like, to do this drug.
There's no shot. I can't believe that.
I've never heard it. That's actually real. That anyone's ever had their guns taken away because they had a weed card. I've never heard that. I can see that argument though.
You know what? I know that's not the case because if that was, I would have heard conservatives complaining. I would complain about it.
They wanted Hunter Biden arrested over it because he filled out a form and said he wasn't a drug user when he's a crackhead.
No. But that's
literally why they want him arrested.
For Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden filled out a form. The form was released publicly, and on it he said he was not a drug user, despite
the 4473 for a gun.
The background check form for a gun. It asks you if you're a user of narcotics.
I feel like they wanted him arrested because they said that he's doing illegal dealings overseas where he's roping his father into the...
Specifically for the gun issue, it was like his girlfriend or whatever, his wife threw the gun in a dumpster behind his school.
Did they accurately date the crack use, though, for when he filled out the form?
That was the question.
That's really important.
Is the argument he quit doing crack a long time ago, thus he was saying no, and the argument was he's like still a crackhead. They found a crack pipe in his car around some time or whatever. And so I am not saying overtly and outright every single person who ever has a weed card will never be able to buy a gun again. I'm saying if they want grounds to take your weapons and you have had a weed card, they will come, they will have a notice and they will say, look, you have a weed card, you're a user, tell it to a judge, we're taking your guns. They'll use it as a pretext. We do.
Wait, hold on. Okay, I looked at the 4470 things. I'm curious now. So it says, so it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? So I would say if you've got the card, you're probably not unlawful, but federally, because it's a federal form, maybe you would be.
You would absolutely be. They actually say on the form, I'm pretty sure it says note, regardless of local laws. See what it says? It says that, right?
Yeah, it says possession of marijuana remains unluful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized. Oh, shit. Well, government's coming for my gun soon.
Completely insane.
You're like, oh, crap.
This country is built on the back of hemp, man. Look at George Washington's eyes on the $1 bill. He's stoned.
Although I will say, I've never heard of like the ATF cross-referencing databases to like axe guns from people that have like legal marijuana cards or whatever.
But they can if they want to.
Theoretically,
right?
maybe.
We got news, ladies and gentlemen. We have information on the Trump indictment breaking. Trump indicted reportedly on 34 counts related to falsifying business records. The indictment stems from Trump allegedly falsifying records concerning a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels, in 2016. CNN reports they were informed of the number of indictments by an unnamed source. So we take that with a grain of salt. Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty, yada, yada, yada. Let's play the clip from CNN. Do we have audio here?
My source is that this is 34 counts of falsification of business records, which is probably a lot of charges involving each document, each thing that was submitted as a separate count in a couple of matters.
Okay, well, that's it.
Is that like if he's like, yeah, and then he responds?
It has to be more than that.
More than what?
It has to be more than just counts of falsifying business records, I think. It has to be something election related to keep it to go past the misdemeanor thing, I think.
I'm gonna agree. I think it's definitely gonna be more than just the Stormy Daniels thing.
Falsifying business records, is that like if they're in an email chain and he's like, are you sure? And then he sends the email, he's like, responds, yes. And then he's like, okay, then is that 3 counts?
My guess is gonna be that I think he was paid back. Wasn't it over a year period or a 2-year period? The falsifying business record, like let's say that I paid you bi-weekly over an entire year, right? It would be 26 different payments that I'm lying about. So it'd probably be 26 separate counts of falsifying records. That'd be my guess. But again, it has to be more than just falsifying records because that's only a misdemeanor and the statute of limitations expired. And it's a fucking misdemeanor. Why would we charge an ex-president over a misdemeanor? That's the most insane thing. So it has to be something different.
From conservatives.
It has to be something more than that. It has to be something more than that. But
I agree. I think it's gonna be worse than people think. Right now, everyone's saying it's the Stormy Daniels thing. I bet it's gonna be something else.
Something completely different.
I don't know about completely different, but it's going to be...
It's got to be related to like campaign fund misappropriation or
the question
something.
will it be dubious, or will it be questionable, or will it be airtight? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's probably going to be dubious. I mean,
know.
Ukraine Gate as it was, and Mueller and Russia and all that stuff did not pan out. I have very little.
What do you, in terms of indictments? There are a lot of good indictments that came from the Mueller investigation.
No, I mean, like, Trump isn't a Russian spy. He wasn't working with the Soviets.
Oh, probably.
Nothing was born of those things. You know what I mean? I feel like this is just like, they're going to spin their wheels. Trump's going to fundraise off it. He's going to raise record amounts of money. There's going to be a mug shot that will turn into T-shirts. People will get rich off of it. Donald Trump will win the election in 2024, and then we'll not even talk about this moment later on.
Does this kind of thing give people the right to go deeper into his life and look for things and serve subpoenas and warrants and things? To like look at emails from 20 years ago? Does it open up old?
I would hope that prosecutors are being intelligent when it comes to charging somebody that's going to run for president. It's not even the fact that he's a former president, it's that he's going to run for president. The absolute worst case scenario for the health of this country is that Donald Trump gets indicted, charged, and convicted of something that's not really that big of a deal that somehow inhibits his ability to run for office. Because now you've justified every single conservative that thinks that the system is trying to keep him out using judicial means. The left doesn't even get to feel good. Because, like, let's be honest, let's say he goes to jail for something really stupid, like lying about, paying off a porn star. Like, you don't even feel good. I wanted him to go down for, like, the P-tapes, for the Putin stuff, right? Not for this bullshit. So, or BS. So, I hope they're sitting at something good. Otherwise, they have to realize they're making the entire United States look like a joke.
I don't think there's going to be anything there. I mean, it's been years. They've known about this for years, and they've not done anything. So it really just feels politically expedient.
And they just disbanded the grand jury 2 days ago or something for a month.
Today, they announced it was going on break for a month, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way.
That's so weird. I have a question for you, Stephen. If it's kind of off topic, but it's somewhat on topic. Like this, I'm talking about the war in Ukraine and the Russian war. What do you think is the solution to ending this or to the future?
Well, wait, hold on. First question is, how do you feel about the war in Ukraine?
I'm happy Ukraine is winning. I hope they get back Crimea. Fuck Russia.
So what do you think would be a solution to make that happen?
Ukraine winning the war and getting back Crimea and saying fuck Russia.
What's define winning the war?
Getting back Crimea. Having their borders restored to what they were in 1991 when they broke off from the Soviet Union and when the entire world recognized the country as having the borders that it did, that included the Donbass and included Crimea.
Oh man. Well, there's a lot of people. Some of my friends think that same thing.
What's the, I suppose, justification for U.S. involvement?
Justification for U.S. involvement is probably that, like, the stability of Europe is potentially at risk, that we are seeing an actor engaged in actions that haven't happened in decades, where one sovereign state invades another sovereign state to steal territory from them. It's just something that we don't really see around the world anymore, especially in Europe. And I think that the opposition to that should be led by the United States. I think it's important for us to be seen as a leader of the world to do that.
Would you be in favor of a similar military response if it came to Taiwan?
Oh, Taiwan and Hong Kong are so much more complicated, and I'm not well versed enough in the history to know if I would feel the same for that.
The stability
Taiwan,
of Southeast
maybe,
Asia and the region, you know what I mean?
True, but I think that our responsibility, the presence we have, and the relationships we have with Southeast Asia. I mean, we do have good relationships with South Korea and Japan, but it's different than Europe. But I would have to read up way more on Taiwanese history and the deals that China has carved out with respecting the autonomy of Taiwan to know if I would feel the same way about defending them militarily versus Ukraine. But I feel very strongly about Ukraine, understanding the Ukrainian history and everything, that their borders should be respected.
Do you think the $100 billion price tag is justified?
I think a really big price tag is justified. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue to know the difference between like 100 billion versus 1 trillion versus 500 billion dollars, but I think that it is worth it for the United States to be making heavy investments into the security of Europe. I think that position that we have as like the leader of the Western world and leading those efforts to protect Ukraine is really important.
Would you go to Ukraine and fight the Russians?
Fuck no.
Would you send other people's kids there to fight Russians?
U.S. troops in Ukraine fighting Russians is probably something I would not support.
Well, what about special forces doing operations to assist Ukrainians?
I don't think so.
Well, what about?
I'd have to think a lot. Well, like, what does special forces mean? Like, if we're talking about like people going over to like train troops, maybe. Like, for instance, if we're sending weapon systems over there and we're sending troops over there to train them use those weapon systems, that might be important so that those weapon systems don't misfire or they're crashing planes up in a pole
they did.
or some shit. They did do it one time.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
What about the U.S. using reconnaissance measures and surveillance to provide intelligence to the Ukrainians to then have the Ukrainians use the weapons we provided to, say, sink the Russian flagship in the Black Sea.
I think so far, I think that's been fair game. I think that a lot of people around the world share intelligence, and that's probably just a given at this point. Us sharing intelligence with Ukraine is probably no different than China or Russia sharing intel with each other as well.
What about former U.S. military, now veterans, fighting on the ground in Ukraine using U.S. intelligence, U.S. weapons, and U.S. funding to assist Ukrainians in, say, like sinking ships and stuff
I think
like
it sounds silly, but I think there is a distinction that they are former U.S. military. The scary part about U.S. troops and Russian troops shooting at each other is the potential for escalation into all of us getting blown up. But if a former U.S. military person gets killed by a Russian troop, that's a Ukrainian soldier, that former U.S., it is what it is.
Do you really think Russia is going like, well, they're not really a U.S. military, so we're not going to do anything about it?
Absolutely.
I disagree.
I think there's a huge difference between that guy used to be part of the U.S. military who's fighting Ukraine versus there are armed U.S. troops on the ground. There's a whole escalatory pathway for U.S. soldiers in Ukraine.
You think Putin cares?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, they just took down one of our drones, whether it was an accident or not. They did a fuel spray on it.
Sure.
And then clipped
and we
it.
do dumb shit like that to each other sometimes when it happens, but they're having uniformed U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine would be a massive escalation.
Do you think Russia is going to allow Ukraine to win?
Is Russia going to allow Ukraine to win? Well, I mean, they've allowed them to get as far as they have so far.
But now they're positioning nukes north of Ukraine and Belarus.
I heard the strategic nuclear weapons being moved into Belarus. I don't know why. I don't know if that's posturing.
The UK is deploying depleted uranium tank busters, which are radioactive. Russia responded by saying, "We warned you that if you use depleted uranium, that's nuclear escalation." And now they're moving nukes.
Sure, but they've been
region.
talking about nuclear escalation for like 2 years.
But then they did it, and now Russia is sending nukes into the region.
Sure, into Belarus, yeah. But like, are they actually going to start using? I don't think Russia is
Yes.
going to. I don't think so. I don't think Russia's going to use.
The mistake people make is they assume nuke means 100 megaton ICBMs.
It doesn't happen. Even strategic nuclear weapons, I think, would be
nuclear artillery.
Unbelievable. Depleted uranium is different than firing nukes.
No, I'm talking
than
about
explosives.
I'm talking about nuclear shells. I'm talking about.
I don't think they're going to be
small
firing
yield.
nuclear shells. I don't think they'd be firing small yield. No Davy Crockett's. No exotic miniature nuclear arms. I don't think that'll happen. That would be I don't even think China. I don't think anybody would support Russia in those types of actions.
I disagree.
You think that China would support Russia? You think that?
Yes, hands down.
Wow.
I think the U.S. has already lost its position. Brazil and China just announced that they're going to be trading outside of U.S. dollars. China's brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Like, the U.S. is in such a fractured position right now that I'm pretty sure China is just going to be like, sucks to be you, United States.
I don't think it's about being in a fractured position. I think it's about, I don't think anybody wants to be in a country where people are shooting nuclear weapons, including China and everybody else in the world.
But I think it's going to be in Ukraine. This is what I'm saying. The U.S. will not. This was brought up by I think it was an EU politician. He said, if Russia uses lower yield nukes in Ukraine, the West will not respond with similar nuclear weapons or greater. Because
who cares what a EU politician says, though?
He said, no, who was this? It was like a UN guy or something. He said,
I don't care who it is. If it wasn't the U.S. president, UN has no fucking. Yeah,
no one is going to risk. What did he say? He says no one's going to risk like Warsaw for Kiev. No one. If Vladimir Putin escalates the conflict in Ukraine, Western forces will not escalate to the point where they would put their home countries at risk. They will keep the conflict in Ukraine.
Well, of course, but Ukraine's not a NATO country. So all we'll do is send stuff to help, but we're not going to be putting troops there. We're not going to be flying planes over there.
What they were saying is that if Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, the West will not fire nukes on Russia in return.
Fire nukes in Russia in return? I don't believe so. But wasn't Biden's initial claim that we'd be destroying like their fleet in the Black Sea or something if they were doing?
Well, we took out their flagship.
Yeah, I mean. But again, I wouldn't look to a UN or an EU politician to speak on behalf of the U.S. military or what the U.S. is willing to do. Because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters, right?
I agree with your principle that countries shouldn't be invading and colonizing territory. But then I look at what the U.S. did the last 20 years in Iraq.
We haven't done anything even remotely similar. We didn't take any territory.
They're not on our border. We have a puppet state in Iraq. We have corporations set up in Libya like
Iraq
Osprey.
holds their own elections. Iraq is its own country. We didn't take any territory from them. We didn't declare any of this. Like, this is now part of the United States. It's a totally different scenario from what's happening in Ukraine and Russia.
We removed the Ba'ath Party from power, which caused ISIS to appear. But I mean, you could say it's it's legit, but it's a puppet state.
I'm not saying it's legit, but I don't think we can call it a puppet state. I don't think it's fair. They hold their own elections. They are their own country. We might not like it. We did remove Saddam Hussein. We did ban the Ba'ath Party from reforming. That is true. But we didn't we didn't come in and say, like, we're going to carve off this part as like New Connecticut.
Right.
As part of the United States now. That's an insane thing to do. Yeah. That's an insane thing to do. We haven't done that. Russia went into Ukraine and they took territory. This is Russia now. That hasn't happened in so long. It's an unprecedented action in this age, post 91, post Soviet Union. That's insane.
Yeah, I think of it as like after the Soviet Union broke up, the oligarchs split it all up and they took away the warm water port from Russia because they didn't want it to be a global hegemon. They were like, no, we're going to give Sevastopol to Ukraine now. Russia's landlocked and they can have their other. And it'd be like in the U.S. if they took the West Coast and took a long strip down the West Coast of the U.S. and gave it to Canada and we had no Pacific access. That at some point the U.S. would be like, this is insane, and we're going to invade and take Pacific access. And that's where I see the Russians coming from.
Well, how? They recognize the border. That's the country. You might not like it, but
it's just de facto. Like
it's not de facto. It'd be like, what if Canada was like, we really want Alaska? This is bullshit. It's not even connected to the U.S. We're going to take this. You can't do that. That's the border.
Try.
They could try.
De facto, if we didn't have West Coast access.
I wish they'd fucking try.
The Canadians.
Well, yeah, no,
God, I would
guys.
just love to just win a war against Canada.
And it would give us pretext to seize Canada. We would end up taking Canada and annexing it into the United States.
No more land acknowledgements.
The way we did with Libya, the way we invaded, overthrew Gaddafi, took
we
him
did
off
that,
the
but
gold.
we did that with authorization through fucking through NATO and even through the UN. I'm pretty sure Gaddafi was so bad. I think even China would like abstain from voting no on that one. But again, I'm just saying that here's what I'm trying to say. There's something very unique in particular. I'm not saying that like because I know a bunch of people throwing out probably saying, oh, he wants Iraq and Afghanistan, blah, blah. I'm not saying those invasions were good. I'm not saying our occupation was good, but I'm saying there's something fundamentally different from invading a country and taking territory and saying, this land is mine now. Even in Iraq, even in Afghanistan, where we were for 7,000 years, we didn't actually say, this is U.S. territory now. Right? There were people there. They ran. They did their elections. They did their things. Eventually, we left. But like, it's not U.S. territory. Whereas that has happened with Crimea and
You know,
Ukraine.
we almost took Mexico. I was watching this documentary on the Mexican-American War, and then Americans were actually in favor of just taking it, and we won. But then the president at the time, I can't remember who it was, Polk or something. He was like, nah, Mexico can stay Mexico.
The tactic the liberal economic order has been using is
we took Texas and stuff.
It's corporate colonization.
California.
They took out Gaddafi, set up the U.S. dollar, and all these American corporations like Sidney Blumenthal's Osprey Global Solutions. Hillary made sure that he got his defense contract in Libya. So they say, oh no, we're not taking that land. But it is profiting us massively because we have it set up as a corporate state.
Sure, I mean, everything profits us. But I mean, that's a fundamentally different thing again from like taking the land and being like, we're going to...
I would argue that colonizing corporately overseas is much worse than taking a piece of land on your border.
But it's still way different.
It's different, yeah.
It's different than like, this is U.S. land that we are now administering legally, and this is our land now.
But if you legally say it's okay to invade and take something over, it doesn't make it okay to invade and take it over just because you said it was legal.
Sure.
You guys are going in circles.
Yeah, okay.
Let's jump to domestic story.
Spiral. We're going in spirals, Tim.
Spirals. All right, here we go.
Forward.
From the
haven't
Daily
made death
Mail.
threats yet. Yeah, okay.
NYPD orders full mobilization plan. All uniformed officers are on standby as extra manpower is deployed to ring of steel around Manhattan's DA's office amid fears of violence after Trump's indictment. I really don't think that New York City is MAGA country enough to the point that they have to worry about a bunch of Trump supporters showing up to the Manhattan DA's office.
I'm just worried they're going to march them all down into the tunnels for drills next. And then we know what happens. Have you seen The Dark Knight Rises?
Oh, that's right. And then they're going to release all the inmates from their jails.
True.
Oh, man.
I've seen The Warriors. Yeah, jeez.
Well, I wonder what New York would be like if, like, I don't know, 8,000 people convicted felons were just released.
All those COVID patients are going to come crawling out of the old person's homes. Those power electric chairs.
They live underground.
Yeah, so anyway, I find this funny because let me see if I have this tweet somewhere. Where is this?
I think people are just like so paranoid, they just don't want to risk it, right? Like January 6th was such a disaster, and it was a disaster at like multiple levels of failing to be ready for what was going to happen. I think for New York, they're probably saying like better safe than sorry because, oh my God, if something got repeated where they weren't ready, it's just going to look so bad on everybody involved. You know?
Sure, we have this video coming out of Tennessee where a bunch of leftists stormed the Capitol and fought with police. They actually made their way into the chamber in what conservatives are calling an insurrection. So, I mean, that's basically it. Look, they're fighting the cops and people are getting arrested. And it happened in Kentucky, too. But like this happens all the time. I mean, it's funny. There were numerous protests by the left where they actually were banging on the doors of the Supreme Court or actually went inside to the congressional buildings and shut down legislative sessions, and they were never considered that big of a deal. And even right now, it's like the media's not covering this like it's that big of a deal to shut down your capital. State capitals, I guess, don't matter. I don't know what.
Well, it matters, but just how much does it matter?
The media is covering it, right? That was a video by the media, right?
Yeah, someone posted it. Was
this is
Kelsey
Greg Price?
Gibbs? Yeah, Kelsey Gibbs posted it and then deleted it. Greg Price got a copy of it and reposted it, and then maybe she reposted it again. It looked like it really wasn't super violent. I don't think anyone got hurt. I can't
Typically,
tell.
what we mean when we say like the news doesn't cover it is that, like, sure, local outlets may run the story, but is it getting headline attention? Is it getting primetime attention? Is it?
It didn't
the
shut
conversation?
down the authorization of the new president of the United States, which was what January 6th was. They were trying to like slow or stop the counting of the votes to get Biden elected or something like that. So it was like a federal election. That was what made that one such a big deal. Plus, it was high profile.
Yeah, it was kind of goaded on by our president. I think it was a big deal too.
He did say Donald Trump was involved in setting it up directly. Not the violence.
When he said peacefully march to listen to politicians.
Yeah, just getting the people in the vicinity. He was part of that.
I think it was when he said for months that they were going to steal our election from us and we need to fight like hell to keep it. I think it was more that than the march peacefully thing. But
he said march peacefully, and there was a permitted rally at the Capitol.
Okay. How can you go? Okay, we're backing up a little bit.
Yeah,
How can you take the one thing that Biden said on stage one time as definitive proof that he was actually trying to withhold aid, but the numerous
literally
statements
said he did,
and Trump literally said that we need to fight like hell.
Trump did not say storm the Capitol.
He didn't say storm the Capitol in those exact words.
And Biden
but he
said in
we
the
need
exact
to fight
words
like hell. He said we need to fight like. What does fight mean?
If
does
Joe
it mean
Biden said,
be obese and stand at the Capitol?
Yeah, it's not an argument. If Joe Biden said on stage, could you imagine if I told this guy I did this and everyone went, oh. No, he literally said he did a thing. And we're like, hey, if he said he did that, we should investigate. Trump said fight, and then later, now go march peacefully. It's like, well, those are metaphors. The left says fight all the time. We don't mean physically. We mean spiritually. We mean politically.
It's that was followed up by months of saying that like they're going to steal the election from you. You have to fight to save your country. Like, you don't think that type of rhetoric can directly lead to people saying like, our election is being stolen, like Trump said it was being stolen, and we need to fight, like go to the Capitol and fight to save our country?
In that line, do you blame trans activists for calling for fighting when this person went and shot up a church or a grade school?
For the trans shooter?
Yeah. I mean, they've been saying it's genocide nonstop over and over again, and they've been saying get up weapons and you have to fight. It's
but I don't know why.
Right?
I don't know why that shooter did the shooting. Do you?
So the police said there's a manifesto, and that
they did say that.
The working theory is it's related to the identity of the shooter.
Okay, you said two. Wait. You said two totally different things. Are the police saying that it was?
Yes.
Okay.
So I read. I'm going to be very specific.
Yeah. I'd be curious because I read 4 different articles. I was trying to find out was anything from this manifesto released. I know the media is saying they should release it.
They will.
My
release
understanding
it.
is the police has not commented on the material in the manifesto yet. What did they say about it specifically?
It was the police chief, I guess. He was asked specifically, did the gender identity of the shooter play a role? And he says the theory is that is the case. We're investigating, et cetera, et cetera.
I heard that.
That's actually what he said.
Okay, I don't know what that means. Like, because it could mean what you're saying. So let's say that in the manifesto, they're saying things like, I've been watching a whole bunch of YouTube commentators like Vosh saying that there is a trans genocide and I need to go and take action to prevent that. Then I would say that's horrible. And people that are saying, actually, even if they didn't say that, the people that are saying there's a trans genocide and we need to fight should be held accountable. I think that's a bad thing. If you believe in stochastic terrorism, I think that that's definitely that. But if it's something like where the person is like, oh, like I'm trans and people in my life don't accept me, I'm going to go shoot up a school, I think that's meaningfully different than inspired by rhetoric from people calling for violence, right?
So when we see these protests from far leftists, like at the Capitol, like in Kentucky and Tennessee, do you think the storming of those capitals is the fault of people like Vosh saying you got to take? I don't know if Vosh ever said that.
My understanding is the storming of those capitals was for gun reform.
Kentucky was trans rights. They were holding up trans rights signs.
Was it trans rights?
Absolutely.
I thought they were doing it in response to the shooting.
Sure, but no. Kentucky was that they're banning. I think it was Kentucky, right? They're banning.
It might have been in
sex changes
Kentucky for Tennessee. I think it was for firearms, right?
Tennessee was firearms, but it overlapped with that issue. It was primarily a firearms protest. So let's just say Kentucky, the storming of the Capitol there, where they're in the gallery and they're being arrested and they're holding up trans signs. Do you think the suspense of that, the inhibition of that legislative session and the storming of that Capitol is the result, is the fault of leftist activists saying take up arms and go fight?
Sure. If somebody is storming buildings, I think they should be held legally accountable. They're trespassing. They absolutely should be. And I think that people that are using alarmist rhetoric to get people to go and fight, whether that's Donald Trump or whether that's far left people on YouTube,
Did
I think
Vosh
should
do
also
that?
be. Yeah,
Or
he
you
does it
just-
all the time. It's one of the things. Yeah, of course.
You got to be careful
Well, hold
about
on,
alarmist
because
rhetoric.
Hassan does it, but he says only in video games.
Well, unless it's an imminent call, like vague calls like, hey, go do this thing, that's not illegal. That's protected First Amendment. But if you say on this day at this time, do this thing, then that's an imminent threat. I understand that's illegal under the First
Sure.
Amendment.
The issue that
Not
I have
under
is
the
a
First
general
Amendment, under
alarmist
Supreme Court
rhetoric.
precedent.
Where there's a lot of people saying that there's a trans genocide incoming, so buy firearms. That feels a little bit like great replacement rhetoric, except on the left instead of the right to me. Where people on the right sometimes will say things like, immigrants are invading, they're taking everything, you need to buy firearms to protect yourself from spooky immigrants that are replacing white people. That feels similar to people saying there's a trans genocide, buy firearms because Republicans are going to take your rights away. That type of like, any type of rhetoric that is basically stating that like your life is on the line, buy a gun, in my opinion, is like very, very, very unhealthy for the state of the country.
I agree. I don't like the metaphor fight for your rights. It's been around my entire life. You got to fight for your rights. And in
But
the United
what-
States, they literally did 250 years ago.
Sure.
And throughout the ages, they have had to do that.
There's
But they
different
have done
kinds
it
of-
literally with weapons. And so the idea that we need to, we got into a fight yesterday. Oh, we mean we are arguing. That's not a real, like, what does fight even mean? I hear Elizabeth Warren
no
say it.
semantics. Come on. This
Well,
is
I mean, that's what we're
ridiculous.
talking about, the word
No,
fighting.
no,
Like,
absolutely
if you
not.
say go fight for your right, are you really encouraging violence?
Okay, fine. But like, typically, every political organization says fight for your rights, and they're not implying physical violence.
I
They're
agree with
implying
that.
a struggle against a political machine to encourage people to vote and to get in politicians and get policy in place.
So if someone's on a heavy dose of psychoactives and they hear that and they go fight physically, you
I
got to
don't
put it
think
on the
you blame the
person.
person.
You got to blame the person that fought, not the
Yes,
person that
absolutely.
said go fight.
I think we have to have like a more holistic, intelligent view of this. What I would say is you have to look at the totality of rhetoric and you've got to ask, where does it lead? If somebody is saying like, listen, lawmakers are coming for your rights, you guys need to fight for your rights, okay? Like, we got to do that. That's fine, whatever. But if somebody's saying like, you are being eliminated from this country, people are trying to genocide you, they're going to use whatever means possible to take you out, you need to get armed, you need to train, you need to be ready for when these people come to town. Like, that's like, okay, what the fuck?
Right,
What are you talking
exactly,
about?
yes.
Right? You have to look at the totality of the rhetoric. It's not just like a one statement. It's like, how is it being presented all
What
together?
we are seeing with these posters like Trans Day of Vengeance, they had pictures of guns on it. It's being accompanied by posters that say, take up your arms, no one is coming to save you. And videos of these activists saying quite literally to beat people. Did you see that one? They got like a club made of a curtain rod and they're like, beat them, hurt them.
Although I'd say we have to be really careful about, because on how big some of these, like for some of these trans organizations that people are obsessing over, the Trans Day of Vengeance, and then there was another one like the Trans Resistance something network or whatever.
Trans Radical Activist Network.
Yeah, like I don't even know if these things exist. Like I see a lot of, like I know Fox News,
I think it had a few thousand followers.
yeah, it had like, well on Twitter, like that.
But they're
that-
the ones organizing the event in DC tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'm curious how many people are going to even show up to that. Because I looked at that page and it's like a WordPress page with like 2 links.
But that's what it always is.
And the Twitter page has like 300 followers.
And you'll
with no
get-
names attached.
You'll get a few hundred people to show up.
I bet it's a Russian op.
Oh, yeah, Russia. I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised if it was Russia or China or both.
Oh, wait, did they cancel it? Oh, apparently they canceled the April 1st thing. April
Oh,
Fools.
really? April Fool's.
Breaking news brought to you on the Timcast podcast.
What was the April 1st thing?
The Trans Day of Vengeance?
Oh, they canceled it.
What a horrible name.
I know.
Where did you get that from? Where was that news?
Well, that's good. They did the right thing. I think that was definitely
this
being
is from
construed as a
them.
violent call. So I think that was the right move.
The organization says this action is not happening due to credible threat to life and safety. Oh, wow.
I think fight for your rights. Okay, vengeance starts to get a little bit weird though.
Yes. Revenge. Also,
Bad
the word
optics.
revenge is. I don't like the word revenge. Because can you have peaceful revenge? I guess you can. Watching someone fail is like a form of revenge. If you're like me not doing anything.
I would say that's an unconventional use of the word though.
Yeah,
probably not good.
Vengeance. That implies past wrongdoing. I do think it's absolutely insane that after what happened on Monday, the media's response to this was very, very much like, oh, the poor trans community, whereas they typically don't do that for any other mass shooting. They don't.
Well, that's
they don't
because
lament
what are the other mass
ideology.
shootings? Usually like white dudes. Like
Yeah, but when you
they're like poor white people.
But no, I mean like even the other trans shooters, right? With like Aberdeen, Colorado Springs, Denver, they didn't come out and say the same thing. It's like this one they did. Which is
yeah,
like
but
a
I think
weird
for
reaction.
I think for this one, there's a pretty big deal about it being a trans person, which I don't think it was necessarily made as big a deal for the past one. So, and then I think that the temperature is up really high right now because apparently Republicans have nothing else to talk about but trans people. So we're like all focused and fixated on trans people right now. So when a shooting happens with a trans
I don't think it's
person-
Republicans. I think it's both Republicans and Democrats.
Republicans are obsessed with trans people right now.
But Democrats are, putting books like genderqueer in schools, or I should say schools are putting those in place. Loudoun County, we saw a Republican get elected in Virginia primarily because of what happened in Loudoun County, which is literally 2 seconds. You get in the car, you drive 20 seconds, you're in Loudoun. And it's because these schools, they had sexual assaults. They had these books depicting graphic things for kids. And then when parents wanted something done about it, Democrats called them bigots and ignored the problem. So they turned to Republicans. Republicans embraced it.
Yeah, but isn't this like what our school boards are for? Like, don't you go to your school meetings, you say, we don't want this here, and then you talk to the superintendent?
Have you watched those meetings?
Some of them, but
when
not,
the parents
not all of them.
go and present the books, they get kicked out or silenced and told they can't speak about it.
For really? For
Absolutely.
all of them?
No, I didn't say all of them.
Well, because I can imagine it happening at like one or
when
two meetings.
Matt
But here's my
Walsh
issue: is that
wanted to
sometimes-
speak in
Yeah.
Loudoun County, they changed the rules so that he wasn't allowed to. So he had to rent a basement apartment to be able to speak.
Was Matt Walsh a resident of that county?
No, and you didn't need to be. Anyone was allowed to speak at these meetings about issues. So when they found out a prominent conservative was coming, they changed the rule to bar him from coming. So he had to become a resident. That was not a rule normally.
Do you think that might be fair?
It is absolutely fair that someone in California can pay AOC $3,000 to help her win her campaign. It's absolutely fair that in a Virginia gubernatorial election, someone from where does he live? Tennessee comes over and says, like, here are my thoughts on this matter and why it's important to change the rules to bar it. I think
but those are federal level things that we're talking about generally, not the governor one, but like the AOC one. But don't you think it might be a little bit different? Like, let's say that you've got like a, let's say you've got like a city.
Full stop.
Sure, okay.
Outside the federal thing, local Democrats raise money out of state all the time.
Sure, I'm saying that if
State-
you have
state
like
senators get
local
money out of state.
superintendent meetings, if I go to my child's school to have a conversation about the curriculum with the teachers and there are other parents there, if I started to see people show up from like California or Wyoming, we're from Nebraska, like I'd be like, what? Like, I don't know why you guys are here right now. That would make me really uncomfortable.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
So
if
I think
it
it is
was
a
the case
problem.
that like, it might have been the case, and I don't know for the Matt Walsh thing, I don't know in particular, but it might have been the case that there wasn't a law in the books for that because it's just something that's never come up before. But if it is going to be a thing, then I could understand like, yeah, you don't need to be at these meetings. This isn't like your political process. This is a very local level thing.
Well, so to go back to the main point, to put it simply, I suppose, Loudoun County was a flashpoint where parents were not being listened to. They were protesting. I remember we went down to Catoctin Skate Park. We saw parents outside tabling being like, when we go to these meetings, they won't listen to us. We need change. And that was a huge rallying cry that gets a Republican elected. So Republicans are looking at this and they're hearing parents say, when the COVID lockdown stuff happened and we heard what these teachers were telling our kids, we were shocked. And when we tried to get these things changed, they resisted. There's one parent's getting sued by the teachers. Who are they getting? It's like the teachers union or whatever filed a lawsuit against them because they asked for records on what's being taught to their kids.
I feel like if we look, I'd be curious to look up that lawsuit because I feel like sometimes, okay, look that one up. I'm curious what they're actually being sued for. But my question would be like, can't you just vote out the superintendent? Like this is part of our local election process. It's like if you don't like the school superintendent, don't we vote on that? I'm trying to imagine what the resistance is. And now what I'm wondering is there resistance for a majority of parents saying something, or is it a few conservatives that are fighting against this and they're upset that their voice is being drowned out by the other parents that don't agree with them? That'd be my question on this.
I think there's like a big difference between sexual degeneracy and transsexuality.
Well,
and
not for conservatives.
that's the unfortunate thing is that people are talking about transsexuality as if it's degenerate, and it's not. Waving your unit in front of a child in a bar is degenerate, in my opinion, whether it's at a public park or in a bar where they say it's okay to do it.
Sure. I kind of wonder this, maybe I'm being a little bit unfair here, but I kind of wonder for a lot of parents if the COVID lockdowns were the first time that they ever actually looked at what their kids were reading in school.
Yep.
And then a lot of them were like,
Absolutely.
wait, what's going on here? And so like the impression is that like, oh my God, all of this crazy stuff's made its way into the school. It's like, well, no, that's been part of a curriculum for probably quite a while. You just never noticed because it was a school you don't actually give a shit what your kid is reading. But that's just a guess. I don't actually know. But
I think
yeah,
that's true. There were a lot of videos where the kids were on Zoom classrooms and the parents recorded it being like, what are they telling my kids? And then what happened was when these parents came out and started complaining about it, because no one knew what was going on and paid attention, they said, you're lying. It's not true. It's not happening. But it is happening, and it is shocking. And because parents didn't pay attention, this is why I think it's become a major political issue right now.
Sure. All right. What's this lawsuit? I'm curious.
I couldn't find it.
Oh fuck! Wow.
Yeah, there was. I would need a few minutes.
I always this is something that happens. Because I always tell people if you hear something like always look it up. I'll hear something like a person was removed from a meeting just because they were asking questions, and then when I later go read the story, it's actually like they were making a ton of noise. They were asked to leave once. It was private property, and then they were escorted off, and then they weren't even charged with a crime. Like things always get like twisted like really hardcore. So I'm always curious when I hear like there's a lawsuit against somebody. Like what is it actually for?
Well,
same thing with
there's
the
a bunch of these meetings, and the reason is their parents. Is this one from Fox News? They'll try to read. Like they'll be like, "Hey, we came here to complain about this book, and you refuse to listen, so I'm going to read from this book." And then once they do, they go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You can't read that stuff in here. That's graphic." And they're like, "Yes, but these are in our schools." That's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, here you go. Here's one of the stories from a year ago. Georgia parent reading sexual content from library at school board meeting is cut off as inappropriate. Don't you find the irony? The concerned parent shot back at the school board member. So this is why people are concerned. I mean, have you seen Genderqueer? Have you seen that book? This is just one book. We had Asra Nomani came in and she brought like 50 different books with various critical race theory, racist ideology, as well as gender ideology stuff. That was like really crazy. Like this book is really crazy. And on Amazon, it's listed as 18 and up only. It's got, it's just got, aside from the overt sex acts that are in the book that should not be accessible to children, there's a bunch of stuff in there that kids should not be reading about. Just in general.
What school is including this? Are they giving it, assigning it
Libraries,
as like 6th grade?
I think a few of them had it as curriculum. A lot of them had it as in the libraries.
Well, okay, so library and school are those are two very different things. Like if my 2nd grader can buy this at a Scholastic book fair, that's one thing. But if this is in like the library of like a high school, I think it's a bit different. Like there are adult sections in libraries at high schools. Like I don't know.
High school librarian gaining attention online for promoting the genderqueer book to students. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know, use Google it. Ron DeSantis actually put together a presentation where actually listed out all the schools that had these books. And the craziest thing was that Nikki Fried, who's like the Democrat trying to run against him, took a screenshot of what he posted and then wrote, "Posting butt plug porn to own the libs." And it's like, yo, that is a book showing a butt plug next to an anus that they're showing children in grade schools. And that's what the complaint is about. If even a Democrat gubernatorial candidate is calling it butt plug porn, I think we got a problem.
Sure, I just have to see what we're talking about. Like what you just brought up, was that a librarian in a school or was it just a library?
High school librarian.
Oh, high school librarian. And what is the book that's being complained about?
I Googled genderqueer.
Is it that they're like telling kids at the library to rent the book, or is it a librarian on Twitter promoting the book?
She went on TikTok and was telling like all of her students or whatever, like, you guys should get this book or something.
But was the book in the library, or was it just a librarian making a book? Because I feel like these details are really important, right? Like, it matters. You know, like if a librarian is recommending a book, she's like, "This is a good book to read."
Yes, they can be found at her school's library.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, just making sure at least. Jeez.
Yeah. So let me pull up the Ron DeSantis one. Because they keep saying he's banning books, and it's like, dude, telling kids you can't have Hustler in the library is not banning books. You know what I mean? Let me see if I can't play this online, so don't pull this up. I can't show you the.
That's for the after hours stream.
Yeah, we can do it there, but I don't even know if people are going to want to see it. So
I want to see it.
Did he?
I need to see it.
You got to give people a reason to come to the after hours streams, okay?
Yeah.
Butt plugs and books might be it.
Let me find the video. If I search for it on Twitter, oh, here we go. Is this it? Ron DeSantis addresses book controversy. I have to pull it up on Twitter because on Twitter you have the full thing.
While he's looking about Hillary's emails, you said something was illegal about those. What was
All
it?
right, here, let's.
All right, we'll go back to it later.
We won't show this on the stream because YouTube will give us a strike if I show this stuff.
Don't do it.
But let's.
Jeez.
Yeah, Twitter video player sucks. I'm gonna have to reload it. Well, you already saw that much.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see well, but I'm assuming it was a butt plug.
It was a butt. It was a butthole. Roberto Clemente.
Baseball.
Can you read the tweet for me? What does the tweet say?
It says, yesterday we exposed the book ban hoax. If news stations could not show this explicit material on air, why should it be shown in schools? Oh, is that what it is? Okay, so they show genderqueer. There's some overt sex acts. There's two little boys engaging in what they should not be showing children. And then where's the... let me see. It's not playing audio. There's no sound coming out of this.
through third grade, and discrimination in a way that an individual by virtue of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin is inherently racist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Here are the books parents found in Florida schools and reported for removal. What was found is shocking. Let's we'll make it bigger and then try and jump
Another, where
This
boy
is an
watches
on-stream,
porn
right?
and asks,
It's not. The audio is.
Okay.
while noting that those are so big, and if none of this causes you to pause, there's another section where a group of boys masturbate together and are pressured to ejaculate into a bottle.
A Mountain Dew bottle of all bottles.
Oh, disgusting.
Are these ideologically driven
Let's Talk
books?
About
Oh,
It
here we go. This is
by
the really
Erica
bad one.
Moen and Matthew Nolan was found in a Broward County school and contains graphic depictions of how to masturbate for males and females, while also including an entire section.
Yeah. So that's what Nikki Free was complaining about. That this is not appropriate for children, circling the butthole and explaining how to use butt plugs and all that stuff. So, you know, I kind of think
I
that
would
should
need
be-
to. I would need to. I'm curious. So is this in a high school library? Are these like in restricted sections, or what is the access to these books like? Because now
Some
when I'm
of them
saying
are in
because
grade schools.
I thought before it was like a porn book. This seems like, whether we agree or disagree, it seems like it's a guide for sexual exploration for teenagers. Essentially, is what it looks like.
butt plugs go a bit beyond that. You know.
They do, but kids stick a lot of weird things in their bodies. A lot of girls that do a lot of fucking dumb things. And
Yeah,
end up
we
hurting themselves.
shouldn't be
And
giving children books explaining how to use butt plugs.
Probably not. I generally probably agree.
Right.
But
No, you know.
again, like I'm curious, like what
And
is
that's
the
just
access?
it. That's
what
just
is the-
it. It's
yeah,
like,
but
hey,
what
let's
is-
not
what
have
is-
that book.
What is the access though, right? Because like again, if you tell me this is available to a second grader, that's a lot
Well,
different than like.
they
that's a lot,
actually-
I'm just saying that's a lot different than like
he
this is a
said-
high school book that like you have to be 18 and older to rent.
They
right?
actually did say this.
For anal sex, with an encouragement to use a butt plug. Even more startling is the guide on how to sext for children, encouraging them to send photos that don't include your face, hide your birthmarks and scars, and edit out your piercings and tattoos. Books by Rupi Kaur, such as Homebody, Milk and Honey, and The Sun in Her Flowers.
Let me jump back.
There's another subtle contains
'Cause he-
Collier, Hillsborough.
Okay, here we go. They explain where they were found and how their kids were accessing them.
Sure.
What was found was shocking, graphic.
Flamer by Mike Curato was found in Broward, Collier, Hillsborough, Marion, Seminole, and Volusia County schools. The camp the boys go to in the book has an island that the book says.
Okay, so they basically
looks
just
like
outlined that it's in schools in Florida.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, you agree there's a difference between, like, this is like in a high school, you've got to be like a junior or older to check out versus this is in like the grade school library. These are two like pretty different things.
Some of
right?
them are in grade schools, yes. Like genderqueer, the reason it got so much attention is because it was in grade schools specifically. I think it was in like a 6th grade classroom or something. The teacher brought it in. I don't know. We cover all this stuff when it happens.
Sure.
We have to pull it
Okay.
up right now. But like, look,
Yeah.
simply put, this is what conservatives have been complaining about. They're like, hey, you know, like in Florida, they said if you're in kindergarten to 3rd grade, you should not have access to this stuff. They should not be teaching it. That's it. After that, you can do like whatever. Parents have a right to know about it. And they said that, in fact, teachers are still allowed to talk about identity and sexual orientation stuff, but not in a classroom setting, meaning a teacher could literally tell a student one-on-one if they asked, hey, what's that picture on your desk? Well, that's my husband or whatever. And oh, okay, that wasn't banned. What was banned was a classroom curriculum setting of educating kids on these issues. And only kindergarten through 3rd grade, though they are now expanding it to, I think, all through 8th grade or whatever.
It is. I think it is important, the word children, because if you're 17 and tomorrow's your birthday, you're still a child legally.
Yeah, I guess it's like the thing that bothers me is that like conservatives will say things like we shouldn't teach this to children. And it's like that. I don't like some of these books would be incredibly inappropriate for like a 6-year-old, but for like an 18-year-old, I don't know. It'd probably be good to know some of this stuff.
Well,
right?
an 18-year-old's totally different.
I know, but that's
17-year-old,
including
let's
children.
say.
So, like for instance, like I'll fight over
Not in schools, man.
Wait, what? Not in schools?
I don't think schools should have this stuff even for 17-year-olds.
There's a lot of stuff available at a library. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I think like a video a book showing how to use a butt plug is over the line.
Sure, and even if you do
sex
think that
ed stuff is fine.
sure. Well, I mean that's part of it, right?
I really disagree. Like you're talking about kink, and kink goes beyond basic sex
do you
education.
think that like toys for women should be discussed in books?
No.
Okay, they
for,
probably
for
should.
kids, you mean?
Well,
No,
what
no,
do kids mean?
For 17 and under,
For like
I guess.
17, 18 year olds.
I think instruction manuals should not be in. You know what I mean? Like that's just.
I think
that's
that
my whole
the
position.
the issue is that teenagers are engaging, and there's a lot of especially conservative parents that like to pretend that teenagers don't do anything sexual until they're 18. And that's just not the case, regardless of what they want to believe, especially when half these conservatives get fucking pregnant at 16, 17, 18. Anyway, but there's a lot of people like to pretend that their kids aren't into anything sexual, blah, blah, blah. And then when it comes to children that are starting to explore and do these things, stupid things happen where people are putting dumb things in their bodies. They end up going to ERs, or worse, they don't tell their parents at all, and they have like these hugely complicated problems. It's probably not the most common thing in the world. But again, I think that for like a 17 and 18-year-old, like books on this available at a school library that's not like assigned as part of the curriculum, I think you can argue whether or not it's a big deal or not. There's probably good arguments on both sides, but it's way different than like an 8-year-old having access to it.
But that was part of the issue. The reason it comes up is because young kids did have access to these books, and that freaked people out.
Sure, if that is the case, sure.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I believe that's the case yet. I don't know if I'm seeing anything compelling. But if it is, I agree. Like there should be an age-appropriate conversation around what's available to children.
Well,
right?
so the issue
Kindergarten
is
through 6th grade, like probably should have no access to any of this stuff. I think we can agree with that, right?
Ron DeSantis' administration comes out and says kindergarten to 3rd grade, none of this stuff. The Democrats came out and lied and said it was don't say gay, despite the fact that the bill barred people from also talking about straight marriage as well.
I believe that the issue with that bill was that after it specified K through 3, I want to say in the very next line, it said an age appropriate up to high school as well. I think there was a vague interpretation there. We can look up the actual bill itself, but I'm almost positive that it included up through high school as a vague line after that K through 3 thing. I'm almost positive because I remember we read the bill on stream.
But either way, it wasn't a don't say gay bill. You couldn't say straight either.
No, well, the issue...
You could not say straight.
I don't know if that was true that you couldn't say straight.
But I believe it did not specify the word gay or anything. It just said you cannot talk about orientation or identity, which includes all of it.
Yeah, but the problem is you generally don't need to talk about an orientation if it's straight, because that's just what you assume, right? I think that the main concern, the legal argument that I heard for the concern for the quote-unquote don't say gay bill, was that bill created a private cause of action that any parent could sue or bring legal action to any school whatsoever, whatever they wanted to, if they felt like one of these things was being brought up in an appropriate manner. And that might extend to just saying that like an author of a poem is gay. You wouldn't necessarily say somebody is straight because that's just assumed, right? It's like in a movie, if we see like a husband and a wife kissing, nobody asks a question, but when two guys are kissing, it's like, well, why are they gay, right? Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a different treatment for gay relationships versus straight ones.
Let's go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com so you can watch the uncensored portion of the show, which will be live at 10 p.m. over at timcast.com. We'll put it up on the front page. And if you're a member, you have the opportunity to submit questions and actually call into the show and ask those questions. So we will be taking calls from our Discord channel. But for now, let's read some of these Super Chats. Daniel Kuhn says, isn't Destiny a girl's name?
True.
Where does Destiny come from? Is it just like a gamer tag?
Yeah, when I was like 8 years old, I was just...
Oh.
It was before the game.
But yeah. Yes, unfortunately.
Did the game make you more popular?
Initially, it pissed me off because it kind of messed with my SEO, but I think I'm doing good now.
It's trending on Twitter right now.
Yeah, it always is. Because the game is usually trending. And then if I do anything, people talk about me too, so it all gets mixed up. I still get emails every now and then from people that are asking me like, hey, can you reset the password on my Bungie account? And like, yeah, it's kind of dumb.
All right. Freedom Jeffrey 1776 says, hi, Tim. How do I become an elite member? You sign up at timcast.com for the $100 tier, and that makes you an elite member. And then you get access to the elite chat room, and the people hanging out in the elite chat room are networking. That's the point. So hopefully, though, once we get our physical location set up, the 3rd floor will be like the actual clubhouse. And it will be basically like a hillbilly version of a social club that people in New York have. So like in New York, they have the $50,000 a year clubs, like ridiculously expensive, like the Soho House or whatever. We're going to do the redneck version.
Wait, you're going to have like an actual place in here where fans are going to come and hang out? Or?
We have purchased a 3-story building in West Virginia that we are putting on the 1st floor, a coffee shop. It's currently in the planning phase.
Okay.
2nd floor is going to be gaming and hangout. And then the 3rd floor is the private club, which is going to be $100 a month, substantially cheaper than your typical social club. So it's like the working class version of these things. So people can hang out, meet each other, and collaborate,
Gotcha.
like clubs do.
Your own Equinox.
Cool. Is that what that is? Well, I mean, like in New York, I think the Soho House is like $50,000 a year to be a member.
Damn.
It's crazy. Yeah, like $4,000 something per month they pay. But then like there's free food, there's free drinks. You're hanging out with a bunch of rich people. So you're like, I got an idea for a business, and then someone connects you with someone else. That's power right there. Helps people start businesses. All right, Wayback says, DeSantis put out a perfect statement in regard to the Trump indictment. He said he won't assist in the extradition and it's a political prosecution. He's won me back with that statement. Trump 2024, DeSantis 2028. I thought it was fine. But it's kind of like him being like, don't count. I'm not involved so it is what it is. I'm not going to give him a C minus. C minus. It's like, okay, whatever. All right, let's grab some more. Mick Spencer says, "Hey, Destiny, thank you for being who you are and always holding fast to your principles. I enjoy seeing you on EFAP way back."
What's that? What's EFAP?
Oh man, it's a show called Every Frame a Painting where they go over like movies, and it takes them like 6 hours to do a movie. And I've been on a couple of those, I think.
Well, they just break it down scene by scene?
Yeah, frame by frame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, Max Reddick says, "Tim, Sam Cedar seems to think you are afraid to debate him, claiming that you asked him to come on the show during COVID as his excuse for not coming on. Would you publicly ask him to come on the show?" So the issue with Sam is I've known him for a really long time, and I made a tweet where I was like, we typically invite people on the left to come on the show, and then they just never do. They never respond, or they respond once and they don't get back to us. And then Hassan and Sam both said, "I'll totally do it." And so I privately messaged both of them and said, "Awesome, would be excited to have you." Especially Sam, because Sam was the first guy to ever give me a shout out in media ever. He said like, "Oh, look at these guys, Occupy Wall Street, fantastic work." And I was like, we'll cover the cost of everything. We'll fly you out. And then Sam basically was just like, "I'm not going on your show." And then tweeted accusing me of like, making it up or something.
Oh, it might have been a COVID thing because he just went on Patrick Bet-David's show.
He tweeted at me that he was going to come on the show and then privately was like, "Oh, I'm not coming out there." And then I'm like, "Okay, whatever. Like you said you would. You actually set a date and everything. I told you the date. I told you the time. You said yes, you agreed. And now when I'm setting this up, you're like flaking out behind the scenes and then putting me on the spot."
If Sam wanted to, would you host a debate with him on your show?
No. And Hassan, yes. Hassan politely messaged me and said, "Hey, look, man, I know I said I would. I feel he said something like, I feel pretty bad, but like, I'm not comfortable flying right now with COVID." And I was like, "Totally understand, dude, no problem." Later on, when I asked him again, he's like, "Bro, I host my own show." And I said, "You are totally correct." Like the idea that I'm going to ask someone who hosts their own show to cancel their show to come on my show, I just totally get it. So if I like Kyle Kalinske, for instance, has talked about coming on the show before, but I'm like, whenever you can, because I know you do your own show. Like I'm not, if people want to come on the show, it's like doing me a favor. But the issue with Sam is that I believe he is like, he's a grifter. Like,
You don't think he believes what he says?
I think maybe half of it. I think he doesn't know about a lot of issues and he says things just for the sake of shock value. He makes a bunch of videos. Like another thing is like all he would do is rag on Dave Rubin. He's like one of those guys who makes a bunch of videos just talking about drama and people that I'm really not interested. And then the publicly agreeing to come on the show in good faith, like when I made a good faith offer, and then privately backtracking and then putting it on me and now claiming I'm scared. Like the whole thing's a bit. Tim's scared to debate me. No, dude, he's just a lowbrow grifter. Bro, I'll have you on anytime you want to come on. Like, here you are. Mm-hmm. And I think you're like substantially more intelligent and capable of debate than Sam Cedar is.
Obviously that's true. No, I'm just kidding. I think Sam's a really smart guy. I mean, I can't speak to your private messages, but yeah, I would hope. I don't know. I don't view him as a grifter. I feel like Sam is pretty honest. He's pretty smart compared to most of the people. If I was scared of anybody in the left to debate, I think it would generally be Sam Cedar,
I'll tell you one of the personal negative experiences.
Okay.
But like still when you have him on the show was when I tried to explain to him deontological versus utilitarian moral philosophy.
Oh, I watched this. And
he didn't understand it. And so how do you convey an idea to someone who doesn't understand these concepts? Well, I went for pop culture, and instead, it was a bunch of.
I remember because you said the villain is usually the utilitarian guy. I remember I watched this clip. I remember a while ago.
And so I said I think we were talking about universal healthcare, and I said it's utilitarian versus deontological morality or ethics, right? Deontological ethics is basically stating that you cannot take an immoral action against an individual, regardless of the outcome. And utilitarian thinking is an action against an individual which is unethical is justified if it benefits the greater. And Sam was like, "I don't know what that means." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, how do I debate a guy who doesn't understand these concepts? Well, me thinking like I'm here to convey ideas in good faith said, think about Thanos versus like Captain America. Thanos wants to wipe out. And then his response was to make a video and all of his fans mocking me for talking about Marvel. But here's a better one. When we released our first song, he ran it through an audio filter to make it sound bad and then played it on his show, calling it garbage and lying about it.
I just saw
like that. The dude is just the lowest of low tier grifters.
Did he? I feel like I saw them. I watched them.
He ran my song through an audio filter.
Was he on that episode? Because it was the girl and the other guy.
I don't know.
I don't remember if he was on the show. But
Sam Cedar's show played the song we put out and put it through this weird filter to make it sound like garbage.
Okay.
And that song actually did really well. It's the best song we've had so far. Charted on Billboard in a bunch of different categories. Mm-hmm. And then they're just like, "Oh, it's so bad. Oh man, it sounds like Nickelback." And I'm like, if anything, it sounds like emo, not Nickelback.
You know, I'll point something out about Sam.
It's just all fake grifting.
Sam went on Patrick Bet-David's Valuetainment podcast.
Yep,
I thought it was very cool. I didn't see the whole thing, but they talked about Medicare. They talked about finances. And then Sam, you put up a video on your channel that says, it's a picture of you and Pat, and it says, Sam Cedar debates rich guy who hates taxes. Like, you didn't even use his name. That's
It's
dirty,
grifting,
dude.
It's all grifting. It's all fake garbage.
Like, he's a huge podcaster. You should make a big deal out of that.
He's grifting.
Well,
But I love you, Sam. And
Okay,
I'd love
hold
to
on.
have you
Gee,
on.
I don't want to fight on every point. That's part of the YouTube game. People do that. I'm sure if I go through your channel, I'm sure you guys have got like crazy thumbnails and titles and stuff. Like, I think my editor probably puts up crazy thumbnails. Like, there are times where I ask him, like, why didn't you have this person's name? And he's like, oh, like this, they don't do well in the algorithm. Or like, you can't put that person's name in the title. It'll fuck the video up or whatever. Wait, maybe that's for some of theirs, but yeah.
But actually, Valuetainment podcast would algorithmically be boosted way more than Rich Dude, which is very generic.
Sure, possibly. When you say
But fair
grifter,
point.
what do you mean by that? I'm just curious.
In the literal sense, I believe that his shtick is to say things to convince people to watch, as opposed to say things principally which attract an audience.
Okay.
So, like, me personally, yeah, there's a bunch of positions where like my opinion has evolved or changed, notably with like police. We had Michael Malice on the show, and then my position changes more towards okay, maybe the cops aren't as I'm not going to defend the cops as much as I used to. For someone like Sam, like his people, whether it was him or otherwise, running my song through an audio filter to make it sound bad, like that's just weird and dirty. And there's been other instances. Like, seriously though, I don't really care to think about the guy.
Okay.
But when I publicly said, like, bro, I would love to have you on the show, here I'm thinking, like, I've debated him before. I know there were, like, people got their hoots and hollers out of it, but it would be great to have him on the show. And then he pulls this stunt. I'm just like, the dude played me and then made it seem like I'm the one who backed out. It was all a grift to rally his audience. Hassan didn't do that. Hassan outright told me, like, I'm not comfortable traveling during COVID. Sorry, bro. And I was like, I appreciate it, man. And that was the end of it.
I saw a tweet from Destiny about a week ago that says, I forgive everybody from my past. Something like that. I'm moving forward. Yeah. I like it. More of that.
All right. Let's read some more super chats. Free Men Die Free says nobody will tolerate a Trump indictment while Bush, Biden, and Obama roam free while being guilty of acts of treason and war crimes. Powder keg is lit. Whether, I'll say this to you, Destiny, whether you agree with them having committed crimes, the sentiment, I think you would agree, among the people of this country is probably there, right?
Yeah, the sentiment is there, but again, I think it's important to ask from a judicial point of view, like, what is the crime being committed? Because sometimes we just really don't like somebody. We want them to be, like, arrested,
I agree, and I think you made a good point about think about if it was Hillary or Trump and, like, switch the positions. I think the greater point often that I talk about, though, is the emotional state of this country can't tolerate something like this. It doesn't matter if it's true or correct. What matters is we know Trump supporters are going to outright be like, it's BS, it's unjust, end of story.
Maybe, but I feel like
dude.
I agree with you to some extent, but I think that a country's strength is measured by the veracity of its institutions. And when your judicial institutions start to bend to the whims of whatever is politically expedient, you might be creating a more scary world than if you have to tolerate some tumultuous short-term period of political unrest. I think that's a really important thing to consider. You're in a really scary area when judges are thinking like, we could indict this guy, but man, it's going to be really rough on Fox News for the next 7 days. Like,
But that's how it goes.
It's like Chauvin. Same thing.
Or the Ahmaud Arbery case. You know about the Ahmaud Arbery case, right? I'd imagine you'd be on the right side of that one.
Those were the guy that got chased down who was jogging in the neighborhood or whatever?
Well, the felony burglary suspect who was fleeing the scene of a crime.
It's amazing.
Man, we're going to have a way different... This is the one where, like...
Well, did you watch the trial?
Parts of it, but this is a long time ago.
So the prosecution outright stated he was a felony burglary suspect. If you get your news from like corporate press or whatever...
God, I'm not familiar with the case. Are you?
Well, then just look into it, because I think you'd come out on the right side.
I did, but there were so many claims. Like somebody claimed that, for instance, like he didn't have tennis shoes on, he had boots on or whatever. But then I saw pictures of what it was. Like, no, these are not boots.
Right,
that's a lie.
That's
right?
immaterial. So the issue was the police went door to door. Everybody had known that someone had been committing burglaries. A gun had been stolen from a vehicle.
Okay.
The cops showed the picture of Ahmaud Arbery to a bunch of the neighbors. When Arbery entered a home under construction and was seen, neighbors all called each other. Someone witnessed the guy running down the street, and they were like, hey, that's the guy. The McMichaels got in the truck and chased after him. Were told by police not to pursue, but pursued anyway. They were in front of him. Arbery had a guy behind him who was filming the whole time. Arbery ran around the truck and then grabbed I think it was Travis McMichael's shotgun, and they fought over it. It went off into his chest, killing him. I think we can make a whole bunch of arguments about whether they should have followed or not followed, but the fact that the dude who simply filmed it is spending the rest of his life in prison, I think says a lot about the fact that it was totally bunk. You know what I mean? Like that guy.
I wish I could cut. Fuck, I hate myself that I'm not familiar with this case. I feel like this is one of those things where I'm going to go home and we'll look into it, and it's going to be completely different than how you've said it.
No,
but
I'm
not. I can't comment because I don't know the details of it.
I'm not coming out here saying he stole a lollipop from a little kid while wearing construction boots and they came to his jogging. I'm giving you so the conviction was due to the fact that under the citizen's arrest law, there was a potential interpretation where the gist of it is, if it's a misdemeanor, you had to have witnessed the crime. But if it's a felony, you're allowed to make a citizen's arrest without being a witness to the crime. The issue was, it was an old law that was written in a simplistic way that had like a comma or something. And the jury instructions by the judge was, you interpret how you see it. The prosecution argued, regardless of a felony or misdemeanor, you had to be a witness. And the defense argued, no, there's two different clauses here. If it's a misdemeanor, you need to be a witness. However, it's a felony, you can make an arrest. The jury decided to take the prosecution's interpretation, and thus they were convicted. So simply put, the left argues he was trespassing. No. The prosecution outright said he was a suspect in a felony burglary. But because they did not witness the felony burglary, they had no justification for a
when they say
arrest.
he was a witness for a felony burglary, what is that? Or that he was suspect for a felony burglary. What does that mean?
It means he had illegally entered a private residence.
Had he?
Yes, he's on camera doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the left said he's just trespassing. He's just burglary does not mean theft. It means when you illegally enter someone's property.
And then the story that you're telling me is these three guys were just following him in a truck. Two guys.
The third guy saw him running on the street and started filming on his phone.
Okay.
Completely unrelated to McMichaels. Mm-hmm. He got charged along with him and is spending the rest of his life in prison.
That's a crazy story. I'll try to look it up more because when I argue with left-leaning people about Rittenhouse, they give me crazy interpretations as well. But that's the case I'm far more.
But we were right
with.
about Rittenhouse. You
were
right about Rittenhouse.
Sure, yeah, but that's just a case I'm more familiar with. But
I think if you look into the Arbery case, you're going to be like, oh wow, yeah. Like
when the Arbery case, what did he enter?
There was a house under construction. He's on camera going into the property and he looks around and then he leaves. That's felony burglary. Now, I'm not here to argue semantics or morality. I'm saying that's literally under the law felony burglary, which the McMichaels used as justification. So there had been a string of literal burglaries. Okay, let me slow down.
Sure.
There had been a string of colloquially defined burglaries where someone entered property and took items. Uh-huh. The circumstance in question that he was a suspect on was he was caught on camera entering private property, looking around, and then leaving. Mm-hmm. That makes him, that if that is proof that he committed the crime, that is felony burglary. We've actually dealt with this. So people need to understand this. If you have property with no fence, no barrier, people are allowed to walk on your property and do whatever they want. All you can do is ask them to leave. If you put up a sign saying no trespassing and they walk onto your property, they're now guilty of a slap on the wrist trespassing charge because they've been given a warning. If you take a piece of thread, a tiny piece of thread, and wrap it around your property and someone goes underneath it, they've now committed felony burglary because they have bypassed a physical barrier, regardless of what that barrier is. So when he entered the house, he had committed a felony. Now, he wasn't convicted of it. I don't know. The point was, there were a string of burglaries and the police were asking people, have you seen this man? Mm-hmm. So when they saw him running into the street, they were like, that's the guy the cops told us about. Chased after him, called the police. The police said, do not pursue.
Okay, hold on. So when you say this, okay, Jesus Christ, it's been so long and I didn't cover this one closely. So when you say the cops told him that, right? So I'm looking at an article from the Independent. The white father and son accused of murdering Ahmed Arbery were told by police that he wasn't a burglar days before they chased the black 25-year-old and shot him dead in the street, according to prosecutors. So were the prosecutors lying there, or did the police specifically say that this guy was not a burglar?
I need to know where that article's from, because if I'm talking about facts after the case.
These are opening statements relating to began Friday morning of the trial of the three white men accused of murdering black 25-year-old Ahmed Arbery.
The police went to them and said, we're looking for this man. He is a felony burglary suspect. The issue...
Because apparently, the prosecutors also shared statements from the suspects where they admitted that they did not believe that he'd even stolen anything. Apparently, Gregory
stealing
McMichael...
is not burglary, though. That's the important distinction. Burglary is illegally entering a premises.
Yeah, but were they
chasing?
But they were chasing him because they thought that he had carried out other burglaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But apparently
he wasn't just jogging, right? This is not look.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, was a citizen's arrest because he walked into a property because they thought he was stealing shit?
A gun had gone missing, and they thought he was the guy who did it.
Yeah,
there was a string of thefts.
But then when Gregory McMichael is here telling investigators, I don't think the guy's actually stolen anything out of there for statements relating to seeing him.
That was a video where he enters a building and then leaves. They believe that was evidence that he had been the person who had actually been stealing things. A few weeks prior to the incident, a gun had been stolen from a vehicle. That's the most pronounced part of the story.
Gotcha.
So Regardless.
Also,
of the
this
point,
is saying
like,
Travis McMichael shot Mr. Arbery 3 times with a shotgun. That sounds like it went off more than once.
you should watch the video.
Okay. Do you think
in
were
the
all
video,
three
they're-
when they were fighting over it?
It's off camera.
So here's the issue.
Okay.
If two people are holding a gun, they're both in possession of the gun.
Sure.
So it's not as simple to say in a news story that he shot him 3 times. That's a prosecution.
Yeah, but 2
argument.
people holding a shotgun
and fighting over it, and then
You
it
could-
goes off.
3 times?
Probably
Semi-auto
it went
shotgun?
off. He was still holding it, and then he fired it 2 more times.
Semi-auto. Okay, a shotgun. You fired a shotgun before, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, 2 people holding, even with buckshot, if you pull a trigger with 2 people, that shotgun's gonna go flying.
So it's really weird. If you watch the video, you can see both of their hands are on it, and they're shaking it back and forth. They had tight grips. I don't just.
Okay, maybe I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
But
later.
also,
I will,
take
'cause
into
sure.
consideration the statements of the defense and the prosecution are going to favor their view of the story.
Of course, I agree.
And the ultimate conclusion was based on the fact that they were performing a citizen's arrest, but because they had not witnessed a felony in progress, they had no right to perform a citizen's arrest.
Sure.
Thus,
and because the cops told them explicitly to back off. Apparently.
exactly,
And that he wasn't a burglary suspect.
he was.
But the cops.
The cops said apparently the prosecutor said that the cops had made the statement to these people days earlier that he explicitly was not a burglary suspect. Do we have the video to watch?
The video of the shooting?
The shotgun? Yeah, I'm curious.
Oh, I mean, I'll try and pull it up, but I got to be honest. We recently tried pulling it up. It's really hard to find. But let's
Okay,
read
sure.
some more
Yeah,
super
sorry,
chats.
yeah, go. I don't want to
And
interrupt your super chat. Yeah,
but anyway, my point is just this. Not that it's like the clearest cut case of self-defense like with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Sure.
But it's that this guy's not a jogger. It's not so simple to say like 3 guys lynched this dude or whatever. That
Wait,
my
was
point.
he not a jogger? Do we not think?
Like, come on, bro. Like, you think a guy drove 26 miles from his house to jog through a random suburban neighborhood?
I don't even know if that's how. This reminds me of like when people are like, did Rittenhouse go to a whole other state to defend his property?
The dude didn't live there.
Yeah, sure, but I don't know where he.
Like, why-
I don't know where he lives.
Well,
maybe
no,
maybe he lives in an apartment complex. He drives around with a jog. I don't know. I truly don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
We'll
But-
read some more super chats
okay.
and then we'll talk more. With members only. I don't want to.
Would a guy drive 26 miles to walk into a construction site and walk away? I'm not sure. Like,
That's what he apparently did.
well, but purportedly he was jogging, right?
So they say he was jogging, but there's video you can watch of him entering this property. And then the left was like, well, he was just looking around, you know? It's like, come on. He's jogging and then decides to go look around in someone's private property. It's just weird. It's
If it's an under construction site, I don't know. But
no,
regardless,
dude. Seriously?
you're telling me that a shotgun went off 3 times in a guy's chest while he was fighting over it. That's a seriously question, right?
Watch the video. I don't know.
I want to see the video. But do your super chats. Go. Sorry.
But no, but like the idea that someone went jogging that decides to, in the middle of the night, jog in the middle of the night and then go into someone's house just doesn't seem to make sense.
Construction site, but yeah.
But like, it's not like a barren frame. It's a house.
Okay.
It's a fully constructed house.
Gotcha.
And there's like materials inside. They're doing the interior, but whatever.
Okay.
All right, let's see what we got here. Mike Casanelli with big old super chat. It just says, celebrate the first super chat. Oh, well, thank you very much.
Nice.
They started doing that thing where it's like, whenever you super chat for the first time, you get an award or something on YouTube.
Oh yeah, in the little YouTube chat.
Nice.
Do you guys have memberships for your YouTube yet?
We had members only chat, but we switched to just running a Discord because it's better.
Oh, gotcha.
And then let people do the free chat.
I mean, you can pay for memberships on YouTube to get little icons next to your name if you guys.
yeah,
have
we do.
We do have that. They have little beanies.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. And you get Bocus and Roberto Jr. emojis.
Gotcha.
All right, let's see. Let's grab some good ones while we're here. Iggy the Incubus says, seeing as Pandora's box is open, can we indict Bush for lying to America to justify Iraq's invasion? What about Obama for Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki? I mean, how about we just go for Bush and the Iraq invasion and all that stuff? Should he be arrested for that?
Break a law?
I mean,
Is it illegal for the president to lie to his citizens? I don't know. Is that a law? I'm not sure if that's a law.
man,
Protected speech.
it should be like declaring war. All right, let's grab some super chats. I'm trying to find a good one, you know. So bear with me, guys. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, Libby listened to you in an article about Biden saying trans people shape our nation's soul, no affirming care, only child sex change and medical mutilation. Nice, correct words. Oh, hi, Destiny. I know, I'm always yelling at the post-millennial. It's funny. And they listen to the show and Libby's always hanging out. So it's like, they know, I know that they're going to listen. But they wrote an article where they said something like assault rifle, and I was like, it's not an assault rifle, so they fixed it. And then they called something gender-affirming care, and I'm like, just call it a child sex change. All right, what do we got? Just a lot of people who don't like Destiny.
Based.
Yeah. Let's see what we got. Noob Actual says, hey, Tim, I appreciate your insight on the show you give. I'd love to see you guys reach out to Lucas Botkin. He has very radical, really traditional 2A views, top-notch American. Very interesting. All right. Yomenai Gaming says, this is infuriating. Destiny is outright wrong about Trump. He never threatened to withhold aid. Biden did that on camera. Look up the Trump call.
Wow.
Is that true? Today's the first I've ever heard that Trump was threatened to withhold aid also.
Pretty sure that's what he got impeached for.
That was the news narrative. But to be fair, we should probably just pull up the actual transcript of the call and then be right about as to whether it was or wasn't. All right. And just let's see. Here's another one that says Destiny's a liar.
Yes.
All right. John Casey says, does anyone believe that Trump can receive a fair trial in New York, let alone in New York City? They want to take this farce to court, fine, but they should have to change it as a neutral venue as possible, to as neutral a venue as possible.
What does that mean?
It shouldn't be tried in New York City.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what would be a neutral venue for Donald J. Trump?
Northern. If you go north of New York City, literally 45 minutes, you actually get a 50-50 zone.
Sure.
You get a jurisdiction with a court that's
I'm just saying that, like, I'm imagining, like, interviewing jurors. Like, do you have a strong opinion on Donald Trump? Like, it feels like everybody's going to be incredibly.
Well, no, but there's like, if you go 45 minutes north of New York, like not even 40 of Manhattan, if you go just north of like the Bronx, it's 50-50 Republican Democrat. So if they asked people, you'd get people to be like, yeah, I voted for him.
Sure. Oh yeah, no, but I mean, like, typically a jury's supposed to be unbiased. It's not supposed to be 6 in favor and 6 against him. It's supposed to be like just random. Yeah, like it's going to be heated. Yeah.
There's no way to get a jury who's going to be like, I don't know who this man is.
Yeah. Well, I don't have strong opinions on. Yeah.
Do you know who this man is? I do. He was the president. Do you like him? Oh boy. That's going to be scary too, because there's going to be people who are going to look around and they're going to be thinking they do like him, but they're not going to say it publicly. William Jones says, Tim, you need to get update on your two-way rights. You can use weed and have guns. Courts gave it the okay about a month ago. I don't think that's on the forms right now. I don't think it's on the forms. All right. El Rojo Grande says, Obama was sued by the ACLU for that strike and lost. The courts have already decided it wasn't lawful, which can only mean it was a crime, just never charged.
Wait, what is that? If they sued him for that and lost, how did they decide it was unlawful?
Yeah, it depends. Was it like a wrongful death suit? Like, it depends on what the lawsuit was. But, you know, like, wasn't OJ, he won the criminal case but lost the civil case?
Sure.
And then he wrote a book called If I Did It, and then the family won the rights to the book and then made the if really, really small. Yep. And it just says, I did it. You know, that was funny. All right. David Morton says, I disagree with Destiny on almost everything, but he has my respect for standing up to the online jihadis.
Jesus.
Russell Miller says, Tim and Destiny, true centrists. I can agree and disagree with both of you on different topics, but I recognize legitimacy of your stances. White pill episode.
What is that supposed to mean?
I think it means that, like,
I'm half Cuban. I don't appreciate that.
Well, like, people think you're being honest about your views.
I don't
You're not
appreciate
trying
being
to be
called
wrong.
white-pilled.
White-pilled. It just means optimism.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let it slide for now.
White pill means you give them hope for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Dye your hair blue.
It's a good thing. Dye your hair blue. Yeah, a lot of blue hair comments.
Yeah.
What made you decide to dye it blue?
Charity.
Oh, interesting.
But now I like it because it triggers the ever-living hell out of people. I'm like the blue-haired guy, cuck, that everybody hates. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah. All right, here's what we're going to do. If you haven't already, would you kindly... here we go. Ant345 says, when I worked on a house under construction, someone robbed about $3,000 in tools and materials. That happens a lot. All right, if you haven't already, would you... Oh, wait, hold on. I got to read one more. Spidge B says, Sam Cedar is obsessed with Tim. Half of his thumbnails have Tim Pool in the headline. If you're going to go low, go get Ethan Klein. He'll bring Cedar like he did to Crowder. 2 for 1. Ha, 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 ha. All right. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Become a member at timcast.com. Go to timcast.com. Click join us. Sign up. Join the Discord server. Chat with all of the people as the show's going on, and your chat appears on screen. And if you're in the VIB chat, meaning you've been a member for at least 6 months, or you sign up at the $25 tier, you can submit questions and maybe even get selected to call into the show and ask questions, which we will be taking tonight. So that members only show will be up in about 10 minutes. Don't miss it. It'll be live on the front page of timcast.com. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL everywhere. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Destiny, do you want to shout anything out?
YouTube.com/Destiny, Instagram.com/Destiny, and Twitter.com/TheOmniLiberal. And also for the show that Tim is doing and me, I don't think we'll be on the same one, but festival.minds.com. If you want to buy tickets to the event going on in Austin, by the guys that are working at minds.com. Yeah.
I checked that URL and it didn't take me to a ticket page. So it might be tickets.vulcanpresents.com at the moment. They may end up changing that and doing both.
Oh, true. Yeah, Sean, good one. If you're listening to me, you gave me the wrong link, so suffer.
So you can go to tickets.vulcanpresents.com, and that's where you can get the tickets. April 15th, Minds Fest.
Damn.
Sean.
If you want to see Stephen debate Milo, it's going to be happening on April 11th, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Uncensoredamerica.us for tickets for that, and more upcoming events were come back to Penn State after Girl Spun Alex Stein. So we'll see what happens next time.
People follow you on Twitter? Oh, what's that?
I was going to say, that's going to be interesting because between the two of you, I don't know how anyone's going to talk.
Like, between me and Milo?
We're going to moderate it.
Yeah.
There'll be a little physical gesticulation.
Yeah.
Show your feelings.
Is he straight now, or?
He's so
ambiguous.
Well, no, so here's the thing. The media lied about it.
Okay.
He says ex-gay. He says Milo explained that he is still attracted to men, but he abstains.
He's less of a
more
degenerate
celibate.
now. He's kind of given up the degeneracy lifestyle. And so for that, if he's not having sex
he's
with
not
men at the
straight.
moment, it doesn't necessarily mean he's straight or gay.
He's just celibate.
He prefers reformed sodomite.
Yeah.
He's
what he
not
calls it.
straight. What if he had sex with women?
But so
Bisexual.
his point was that when he came out and said this, he's still attracted to men, but he's choosing to abstain from sex altogether.
Oh, altogether.
The media came out and said he's claiming he's straight now, and he never said that.
Are you really gay if you abstain completely?
I don't know.
I wonder what makes you gay, the act of sex or wanting it.
All right. Let's get to the members only section.
I'm Ian Crossland. You can follow me on the internet anywhere. We also have Serge Duprea.
Yeah, Serge.com. Let's get to the members only.
All right, everybody. We will see you all over at timcast.com in about 7 or so minutes. Thanks for hanging out.